Good evening, good morning. Hello, Klaus Peter.
Hello.
Hello,
It's very good to see you here.
thank you.
Hello, all my colleagues here. Ladies and gentlemen, our distinguished guest and our friend, it's very great to have you all here. Anyway, thank you very much for being with us today. My name is Jae-Hyun Choi. I'm the local organizer of this Heritopolis meeting. I would like to give you a short brief introduction about today's session and telling about the background of this session. This session is organized as a part of the 16th World Congress of the Organization for World Heritage Cities, which main theme is about the enhancing livability in World Heritage Cities to develop a new urban project for the OWHC. Our Korean scholars paid attention to 5 urban themes proposed by the OWHC, including the transformation of the public spaces, enhancement of residential spaces, evolution of mobility, adaptability of built heritage, and formation of new governments. These themes are quite interrelated and interdependent. Moreover, we choose deliberated the Korean ancient cities that were inscribed on the World Heritage List respectively, such as the Gyeongju, Gongju, Buyeon, and Iksan, under the title of the Gyeongju Historic Area and the Baekje Historic Areas. These World Heritage sites are composed of the fragmented archaeological site, making archaeological landscape scattered around the whole urban area. Now, I'd like to invite 5 of our distinguished Korean experts and to asking them to say about our research outcome for each different keyword. I'd like to tell you all presenters have 15 minutes for your presentation. Okay, now I'd like to invite Dr. Mi-ok Choi and asking her to open our session.
Okay.
Dr.
Hello,
Choi, the floor is
everyone.
yours. Thank you.
Yeah, hello, everyone. My name is Mi-ok Choi. I'm a director of research group MIRE. My presentation topic is enhancing livability of World Heritage City through a holistic conservation approach to cultural environment in Korea. It covers this first. Would you please page down? Can I? Okay. It covers this first, the status and problems in the preservation of urban cultural heritage is reviewed, and then introduces the concept and framework of holistic conservation, holistic cultural environment conservation approach. Next, introduces the applied cases of HCA in Gongju City. Finally, present the effectiveness of this approach and conclusion. So would you please page down, excuse me, may I page down this? Okay. The relationship of the, 내가 해야 되나요? 그 처장님 아니면 거기서 해주시나요?
네, 여기서 그냥 원격 조정하겠습니다. 걱정 마시죠.
예, 원격 조정해 주십시오. First, the urban cultural heritage and living environment. Setting a proposal method to conserve the cultural environment of the World Heritage Site. For urban heritages, however, setting a proposal is not enough for conserving cultural landscape, especially in a country where the rapid urbanization is taking place. It is not easy to prevent the incompatible developments and high-rise buildings outside of buffer zone. Within the buffer zone, the regulation for the protection of cultural properties leads to extremely poor living conditions for inhabitants, while on the other hand, the landscape of cultural properties is often blocked by high-rise buildings outside of buffer zone, which damages the cultural environment. Now, please page down, please. Next page. Let me just briefly touch about the framework of holistic conservation approach to cultural environment. Holistic conservation approach to environment has been developed first from 2005 when making the ancient capital conservation plan in Korea. The primary purpose of HCA is to conserve historic authenticity of the cities and improve cultural landscape on a citywide aspect. The second purpose is to enhance living environment in a form that harmonizes with the cultural environment. And the third purpose is to revitalize the city by using the living and cultural environment as a touristic attractions. Next page, please. HCA consists of two main axes. One is planned for an area to be preserved and restored historic city structure. And the other is a plan for an area to be revitalized, such as the living environment improvement project and urban revitalization project and resident education. This kind of plan is carried out in the revitalized filling space. Next page, please. Among these two axes, my presentation will focus on the living environment improvement projects for enhancing livability of World Heritage cities. Let's look at the background of resident education. Before and at the time of planning, the HCA, there were a lot of demonstrations from residents, as you can see in these photos. So to persuade and educate residents on the values of cultural heritages and cultural landscape conservation, the four ancient capital cities of Korea have often 10 to 12 weeks of education program. For semesters a year since 2 years, please. Next, please. Page, please. Let's look. Will you please page it down, please? Dr. Che, please page it down. Oh. No, before the project. Okay. Okay. Let's look at the case of Gongju City that carried out the resident environment. Oh my goodness! Would you please, before the slide, I need the one page before. Okay, for your reference, let me show you the location of Gongju City. It is a lot of the company. Next page, please. Would you page down the next page? Okay, yeah. The pilot project. Oh, before. Okay, no. 2 pages before. Yes, this page. The pilot project district of Gongju was
Dr. Che, I think that the internet connection is so bad right now because outside we have snowing. So if you like to turn off your camera, that it helps a lot.
and the okay, can you hear me? There,
It's better,
there are
it's
different
better.
types of houses built in different periods, including old housing, old traditional housing, Hanok, pre-modern and modern buildings. From 2015 to 2021, a total of 97 houses constructed, 24 houses have been renovated and restored, and 86 fences and gates have been repaired. Next page, please. 2 pages down, please. Next page, please. Oh my goodness. Before the project, decade and 1 page before the project, decade and empty houses were distributed in the city center along the river. The stream were also being poorly managed, like you can see these sceneries. And after the project, please page down, please. After there was a lot of changes of houses and living environments. Next page, please. After the project houses, houses constructed and reconstructed, fences renovated like this. And next page, please. Next page, please. The exterior and the structure of the old houses and buildings is preserved and restored to their original form, and the interiors are remodeled and used as dwellings, bookstores, studio, cafe, and guest houses. You can see these pictures. Old houses renovated into bookstore, a modern house in the 19th restored as a guest house. Old house renovated into an exhibition hall. Next page, please. Next page, please. This is an old house renovated into cafe by preserving the wooden beams of the Hanok as they were. And another picture is an old house changed into a co-learning place, small seminar and meeting room. And alleyways that had been left with a shabby cement fences were turned into a space with poetry, flower, and neighborhood story. Next page, please. Next page, please. There are voluntary movements, cultural activities of residents. Residents hold photo exhibitions in the abandoned warehouses and alleyways. You can see the pictures. They shows the festival in the stream. And a new tourism trend is noteworthy. In the past, only cultural assets were the key places for tourists to visit. Now, tourists spend a lot of time visiting cafes, bookstores, restaurants, and cultural arts exhibits around the cultural heritages. And next page, please. Next page, please. Next page. Next, please. HCA. The greatest effect of HCA. Next page, please. The greatest effect of HCA is the change in the perception and attitude of people towards the preservation of a cultural environment through resident education and housing improvement program. The negative perception of the residents toward cultural landscape conservation has changed it into a positive one. The residents' desire to demolish old houses and buildings and build new high-rise buildings has changed into a form that preserves the traces of life of the old buildings. And the changes of residential environment. Would you please turn down, page down, please. Next page, please. Next page, please. Next page, okay. The effect, one page before, please. Changes of residential environment from shabby to lively cultural environment, enhancing the cultural landscape of World Heritage City. The residents voluntarily movements to create cultural activities appear, which have transformed the shabby residential environment around the cultural properties into lively cultural environment. This plays an important role in enhancing the overall cultural landscape of the World Heritage Cities. Next page, please. Next page, urban regeneration ripple effect. Not only the buildings in the housing improvement projects throughout the HCA turned out to have a ripple effect also, spreading out of the buffer zones to the entire downtown area, resulting in the overall urban regeneration effect. Not only the buildings in the designated cultural environment district, but also the buildings outside the district, which are not supported by the government, started to be renovated. There is an increasing number of people who went out to live in other areas now return to their hometown, purchasing an old house and renovating it as a workspace, exhibition and performance hall, cafe and guest house. And lastly, new tourism behavior has emerged. Housing improvement project areas have become new tourist attractions in Gyeongjae now. In the past, only cultural assets would keep conclusions, a well-organized framework. Next page, please. Conclusions. A well-organized framework, fine-tuning development and heritage conservation throughout the city is important for enhancing livability and conserving cultural landscape of World Heritage City. HCA can be used as an alternative for enhancing living adaptability in World Heritage City by incorporating spatial planning concepts in cultural environment conservation system. It can provide the effective framework for improving living environment, as well as conserving overall cultural landscape of the World Heritage City. And a World Heritage City can be managed sustainably when residents highly value the heritage in their area and voluntarily participate in the preservation of cultural environment of the heritage. It is necessary to change the people's perception throughout the resident education program and to reduce inconveniences in the living space of the residents. Thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry for the problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Che. I think that the internet connection is not enough to smoothly just delivering your message to all of us. And because of this bad weather outside, it's still snowing here because this is a winter time. But in Korean old saying that the first snow is bring us a luck, good luck. So this is not a bad day anyway. We have a quite beautiful snowing outside. Okay, and I like to put adding up a little more comment later after all our presenters giving their presentation. And now I'd like to invite Dr. Gil Ji-hye and Dr. Shim Hae-sung, and just asking them to give us a presentation, which is about the bridging World Heritage cities to life through building network for public spaces. Dr. Gil, the floor is yours now.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear my saying?
Yes, very loud and clearly.
Okay, thank you for attending this meeting. I am Jie Gil, and Ms. Hae-sung Shim and I will present pilot research composed of 2 case studies about Iksan, one of the World Heritage cities in Korea. This presentation is the result of the workshop conducted with OWHAP and has been briefly summarized. So if you have any additional queries, please refer to our final reports. I'll present the first half and Hae-sung Shim the second half. The presentation order is as follows. First, let me explain this study's background and overarching objectives. There have been many legal and policy framework changes regarding World Heritage cities in Korea. The main object of this study was to ensure the sustainability and livability of this World Heritage city, Iksan. Therefore, we concentrated on effectively utilizing historical and cultural assets considering various local components and surroundings. Baekje Historic Area was added to the World Heritage List in 2015. It consists of 8 component sites in 3 cities, Gongju, Buyeon, and Iksan. We focused on Iksan, in which 2 sites are located. This is the notable Miruksa Temple site, and this is a view of Wangongri archaeological site built in 7th century. As you can see from the map, the 2 sites are located only 4 kilometers apart, but they need to be connected well. Our key question was why its components of the serial properties was not connected, and why World Heritage became fragmented and isolated from the local community. This study aims to maintain the OUB of the World Heritage site by creating and strengthening various networks with local communities and cultural and environmental resources. We conducted field trips, in-depth interviews with the city officers, and data collection. The idea was then developed through several discussions and consultation between Ms. Shim and myself. When analyzing the overall environmental conditions and various projects underway, we observed the city's high cultural and natural potential. However, the weak connection with the local communities and lack of connectedness between heritage were essential points to be improved upon. Each resource can become an asset through sound connections. Suppose we can make these spaces more easily accessible and welcoming. A connection can positively influence the urban ecosystem and help solidify this attractive regional identity. First, we could find out the high natural potential. Our heritage sites are already in harmony and connection with nature. And reservoirs, ponds, and streams are also located close by. The streams flowing down from the reservoir are connected to various parts of the village. Second, there are various historic sites, treasures, and local monuments. Currently, excavation, restoration, and maintenance projects are underway for each cultural property. Third, 3 museums and a library have recently been built or renovated, and a visitor center is under construction. First, natural settlements are scattered between these 2 World Heritage sites. Lastly, various projects have been carried out under the master plans to preserve and promote ancient cities. By examining diverse resources, we conducted 2 pilot studies on building physical and conceptual networks in public spaces. The first case study was titled Livable Green-Blue Connections with Cultural Heritage for Local Communities. The first issue is that there are paved facilities with similar functions, such as squares, benches, parking lots in the entrance space of the heritage site. This is not positive in terms of the human connection or its ecological corridor. Therefore, it is necessary to consider the whole entire area holistically and assign functions to each space. And the environmental friendliness of the entrance space should be also treated considerably. Roads separate each resource, so we must pass through the tunnel or cross the large roads to move to adjacent spaces. So the second issue is to explore various connections design solutions considering the heritage location. If we could connect such fragmented spaces near cultural and natural resources, the ripple effect on the local community would be more significant. The 2 pictures above and below are contrasting examples of the village landscape. Hano construction, fence replacement, and the maintenance of alleyways are in progress in the slide as below. And also, this village is well maintained to provide direct access to the heritage sites. The third issue is to support semi-public spaces such as alleys, alley gardens, etc. These projects with the local community can link the heritage with the community. Currently, there are some pedestrian trails near the villages and mountains. However, the trails are rarely used. Also, a World Heritage Road is also being planned and will operate a shuttle service with various stops. Last issue is that these trails and roads need to be expanded and managed to connect to each culture and natural asset and villages. The connecting point of the World Heritage Road also seems important. It is necessary to have an overall perspective that can easily access and connect to the heritage site. This is the end of my presentation. From now on, Ms. Haesung-shi will continue.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. Can everybody hear my voice well?
Yes, clear and loud.
Okay, thank you. I will continue to present the second case study that following the first one. This part actually will briefly show how the physical connections are, which was represented by my colleague Ji-hye, interlinked with the conceptual network by revisiting the concept of mobility. Next slide, please. Taking into account social changes and technological innovations occurring within the urban context, we could have a chance to broaden our understanding of time and space in different ways. For example, the spaces are understood as being places that contain a wide range of social, cultural, and environmental resources for use, so that the places have the potential to create new values. This actually led us to discover and recognize the important linkages among the heritage elements that constitute places. Next slide, please. To fully utilize the abundant available resources, we took note of cultural institutions located within the heritage preservation and promotion districts in Iksan City. The cultural institutions actually have long played a communicative medium in the preservation, interpretation, and utilization of cultural heritage. These institutions have offered us public spaces to connect people with historical and cultural assets. For this reason, that by strengthening the role of these institutions, we could have a better understanding of heritage places, which enables us to recognize the functions of ancient city to ensure a sustainable development and holistic conservation and management approach. Next slide, please. So to reconnect available resources in Iksan City, 5 organizations are considered for this pilot study. Next slide, please. They are presented in the map of the slide on the right side. There are 3 museums and 1 visitor center and 1 library. Cultural institutions connect 2 things at the same time. The organization helps connect the meaning of places through artifacts, monuments, and sites, as well as their interplay with other social, environmental, and cultural assets. And the other connection is the generation of physical and cognitive interaction between heritage places and both local communities and the visitors. In particular, the adaptation of innovative digital technologies for producing communicative materials has inspired people to learn and make emotional engagement with the multi-layered time and space of the past. Next slide, please. Let me briefly show you the 5 institutions and how they are connected to the physical network of the public spaces and contributed to revitalizing the Iksan as an ancient historic city. As you can see in this slide, the 2 national museums, as can be seen in the small pink dotted circle, are situated at the juncture of 3 different roads, as previously mentioned by my colleague Jihe. Next slide, please. This is a museum. Yeah, next slide, please. And next slide, please. And there is another museum, what's called Bakje Royal Palace Museum, at the another end of 2 different roads as well. And next slide, please. And next, please. Next, please. And this is the Iksan World Heritage Site Visitor Center that is under construction and is expected to be completed in 2023. And next slide, please. This is bird's eye view. And next slide, yes. And this is Gunma Library, located in the middle of the World Heritage Road, which is planned to be constructed. Next slide, please. Next, please. Yes. So considering these 5 different cultural institutions, we wanted to propose how to approach it to a new physical and semantic connections within the Iksan city. Here is the overall map of the visualized location of the 5 institutions and connected resources. If various network connecting cultural or natural resources, indicating by different colors on this map, are formed, the semantic building network of 5 institutions can be activated. So thanks to the physical network, it is possible to more freely exchange the meaning and the context of a resource through the movement of people. So this means that the closer the 2 networks are connected, the greater possibility of efficient and active use of resource can occur. Next slide, please. Okay, let me move on to our key takeaways of our proposal. Next slide, please. So through this research, we actually came up with 3 keywords in relation to the public space and the mobility. When movement and flow happen, and the 13 connections are made for creating a new networks, and then the new form of networks are driving forces to facilitate a new activity to another movement. Next slide, please. So to conclude, establishing the connection of environmental and natural resources linked to the cultural heritage plays an important role in the sustainable development of a local ecosystem, and it can be an important mechanism to reveal the meaning and the value of 2 areas of space that have not been recognized. And furthermore, it is proposed to promote new experience and communication that can maintain and convey the identity and the uniqueness of Iksan as an ancient city and world heritage by incorporating digital technology to expand its perspective on the cultural resources through innovative presentation and interpretation method. So as a result, the integration of a network proposed in this research can be used as one of the ways to explore the possibility of creating various synergy effects in restoring the functions of the city while strengthening the interconnection with the local communities beyond protecting the OUVs of Iksan World Heritage. Next slide, please. Last but not least, we would like to also emphasize that this integrated network approach is also in line with the international effort for preservation. For example, the UN 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda states it's about integrating ecological perspective in the discourses about the issue concerning people-centered conservation method. In addition, the internationally discussed principles of conservation and management of historic cities, such as UNESCO recommendations and the Valletta Principle, support to the overall approaches of the city and pay attention to the changes in historical areas caused by the interaction with people. Well, this is the end of our presentation. Before closing, I would like to thank you, the organizers, for the cordial invitation and the great effort made for the excellent organization of this meeting. We are very honored to be joining this event, and thank you very much all the participants for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kim and Dr. Shim. It's a wonderful presentation, and you give us a very clear idea how we combine the mobility concept within the World Heritage framework. I'd like to remind you that the previous sessions yesterday, we discussing about the notions of the Heritopolis. Quite inclusive approach is being unanimously advocated by all the members. And then we like to move on more further beyond the SDG 2030. So maybe your presentation is included in our Heritopolis subject too. So now I'd like to invite the Dr. Ji-hyun Kim, and the floor is yours, Dr. Kim.
I realized that I was mute. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, clear and loud.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you can see my presentation well as well, right? I'm going to operate
Yes,
for myself.
Clearly, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well, the topic that I'm going to share from now on would be a bit boring because, it's going to be about low-end policy, but I'm going to share some cases as well. So I hope you would find it interesting. Let me focus on the participation of the local community in governance for World Heritage protection and promotion. And I realize my presentation is not working in some reason. Let me move to next slide. Okay, it's working. So I will skip some background part because I know that many of you are the experts in the field of World Heritage, and then you may be very aware that the fifth C, the credibility, conservation, capacity building, communication, and communities are the very important strategic objective of the World Heritage Convention. And I focus on the community, the fifth C, and also figured out that there was a lot of changes in the operational guidelines of the convention, emphasizing the involvement of the communities in management and also promotion of the World Heritage sites. And these are the evidence. And then, under the influence of those changes of the international society, Republic of Korea also moved forward. And we recently adopted legislation on the World Heritage Convention solely, because before that we acted, we we implemented the World Heritage Convention under the Cultural Heritage Protection Act, but we separately, adopted the Seoul Special Act on conservation, management, and utilization of World Heritage. And then this was the start of my research. I mean, there was special law, and what is the reality for the participation of the local community? So I look into the some provisions of the Special Act, as well as the concrete ordinance of the World Heritage Cities in Korea concerning the participation of the local residents. And also I chose 3 cities as a case study to figure out, how people were really involved, and then, like how they really feel about it. So there was some interviews with the local residents and also local government officers as well. I'm trying to be very brief because I realize that we are a bit behind the schedule, but let me, just show the several articles that emphasizing the participation of local communities in the protection and management of the World Heritage sites in Korea. As you can see, there are several articles. In particular, let me, okay, the last one, Article 13, under the special law on World Heritage Convention, World Heritage sites in Korea, we stipulate to invite those local people in the decision-making process. So we try to, like listen to the people's idea because they are the one really, living there. And well, it seems, all the provisions of the Special Act was really beautiful, but even the communist society like North Korea have a really beautiful law, so we never know whether the the reality is really beautiful like that or not. So I try to look into more in detail about the ordinance, because the ordinance are really concrete, the provisions really on site, but I figured out that the ordinance of the World Heritage Cities are really far to go. I mean, there were several provisions, but it is only about some the committee or governing the World Heritage like project decision making. So it seems there should be some progress about this. So I checked, some similar ordinance, like ordinance of city plan, and then there was a very concrete, articles like a public hearing. It, gave some examples of, how we can proceed with the public hearing concerning the major projects for the city development. I think, many colleagues of Heritopolis could be could find interesting for this part as well, because you're much involved in the city development projects. So I thought that this could be a good reference for World Heritage ordinance in the cities as well. And there were 2 case studies. I mean, one is about the restoration project in Gyeongju, and the other one is the some promotion project in Buyeon and Gongju. This project is a really huge project with the fund of 745 million by 2025. And then I realized, according to the survey, it seems there exists necessity of active communication with local people for further understanding concerning the project, because they were aware of it, and however, they felt they need to be more involved. And according to the interview with the local people and the local officers, I could figure out that there is some regular context between the relevant department of the municipal government, but and also the municipal government is increasing contact with residents. It's trying, but it seems there could be some progress. Yeah, because the local residents felt they were not really aware of it fully. So that's what I found from Gyeongju project. Yeah, I marked in red as a conclusion from my quality research. I think I repeated quite a while, but there's one thing that I wanted to add. I mean, interestingly, those local officers in particular talked about some role of the experts in between. I mean, experts as a culture broker, kind of, I mean, experts can coordinate the communication between the local residents and local government, because sometimes local officers feel a bit difficulties in communicating with people living there, because they feel like they're bothering them too much. So I think experts can can play some intermediate role between them. The Smart Town Challenge in Gongjin Buyo project is also very interesting because they used online platform to communicate. It's similar, but the findings from the interview with the participants was a bit interesting as well. I mean, it was really nice. In particular, it was during the COVID-19 time to communicate with the local people through the online platform. But there was also some needs concerning the culture broker, I mean, the experts role. And also there was some needs to accommodate the people who are ignored from the IT technology. I mean, usually in Korea, those historic cities, the majority of the residents are quite aged people. And those aged people, well, I'm not talking about the prejudice, but, but usually those people are a bit behind of, the technology. And then, if we move forward on this kind of online-based communication platform for the communication with the local residents, then they can be very much, marginalized. So I could, figure out some necessity of the education, IT education for those people if we really go forward for IT-based online communication with the local people. So these are the keywords from my research. I mean, promotion, communication, and reflection. I mean, I could really realize that the environment is changing, in particular legally. Government have a strong will to change their attitude toward the local people. I mean, to invite them more actively in the governance. However, like in a concrete way at the local level, it seems local municipal governments need to develop further concerning their ordinance. And then at the same time, promotion, I mean, encouragement for local residents to be aware of the big project concerning World Heritage, and also their voluntary participation should be much encouraged as well, because, like without them, I mean, without their will, this kind of, the legal settings doesn't mean anything, right? And I talked about the IT education as well. And lastly, yes, experts role as a culture broker. So these are the findings. And I recently released the article at the conversation, thanks to the support from UNESCO World Health Center, summarizing the findings of my research and case studies as well. So I hope you can find it interesting later. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kim. It's a wonderful presentation. Now, the last speaker, I'd like to invite the Professor Ji-Young Kim from the Korean National University of Cultural Heritage. Dr. Kim, floor is yours. You are muted.
Thank you, Professor Chan, to introduce me. Hello, everybody. I'm going to give you a presentation on climate-friendly World Heritage City, a case of Buya. I'll share my screen with you. Good afternoon. My name is Jiyoung Kim from Korea National University of Cultural Heritage in Korea. Next, please. These are the contents. Next, please. Today, I'm going to talk about the climate friendly strategy, a case of Buya. Livability of cities is determined by several factors, including natural environment, disaster, safety, health, infrastructure, public services, culture, so on, which are in the same line with the issues being dealt in the climate change responses. This means the climate change response capacity directly affects the livability. Next, please. In 2014, the World Bank conducted a study on climate resilient, climate friendly World Heritage cities at the request of OWHC. In this report, multi-hazard risk was reported in the climate change adaptation sector of World Heritage cities and the risk ranking, including flood risk and landslide risk. Next, please. This report says that from the perspective of climate change mitigation, downtowns in the World Heritage cities emit less carbon dioxide than newly constructed cities. This is because old buildings are naturally climate friendly than new buildings in terms of material use and thermal systems. Next, please. As such, World Heritage cities contain important issues in both adaptation and mitigation of climate change, requiring effective policies. Let's take a brief look at the threat of climate change in World Heritage cities through the SOC data provided by the World Heritage Center. Among the World Heritage sites, 320 heritage sites in 101 countries belong to historic cities. Among them, 96 cases of reporting the threat of climate change and severe weather changes. Next, please. Buya, the destination of this presentation, is the core city of Baekje historic areas, which was listed as a World Heritage Site in 2015. This is Korea at the left side photo, and the Baekje historic areas at the right are located in an area somewhat off the west coast, but not by the sea. It includes 8 components distributed in 3 cities, Gongju, Buya, and Iksan. The kingdom of Baekje, which existed from the 1st century BC to the 7th century AD, flourished the most during the Buya capital time. Today, Buya is a typical rural city with a population of 63,000 and has a low fertility rate, 0.85, and a high elderly population, 33%. It has a low urbanization rate centered on agriculture, according to the National Land Use Plan. And the green areas account for 91%, which is very high. In addition, there are many empty houses and open spaces in the city center, so the vitality of the city is declining. You can see the slide now. The 4 components of Baekje historic areas are archaeological site in Gwangbokni and Busosansan fortresses, which are indicated in number 3. And on the map, Jeongnimsaji temple site, royal tombs in the Nungsanni and the Nasong city wall. Among them, number 3 and 4 are located in an adjacent to the downtown of Buya, whereas the Royal Tomb and the Nungsanni and Nasong City Wall are in the outskirts of the Buya city. The development activity of these historical zones is strongly restricted by the law. Next, please. Buya County establishes a master plan consistent with upper plans, such as the National Land Comprehensive Plan and Provincial Level Comprehensive Plan, including other legal plans. In addition, various development plans and strategic projects, such as Urban Revitalizing Project, Spatial Environmental Strategic Plan, Conservation and Management Project for important relics and of ancient Baekje capital are being promoted. In these plans and projects of various levels and goals, Buya County keeps maintaining its strong identity as a World Heritage city and a World Heritage City. In particular, the Conservation and Development Plan for Ancient Capital Cities is a major plan to preserve Puyo's historical and cultural value as a World Heritage City. In this presentation, several key plans such as Conservation and Development Plan and Implementation Plan for Climate Change Adaptation and the Spatial Environment Strategic Plan will be mentioned, which are recently aimed at making an eco-friendly city. Puyo. Next, please. According to the second Climate Change Adaptation Action Plan of Puyo County, some vulnerability are found in Puyo. The vulnerability to climate change in Puyo was evaluated for health, disaster, agriculture and livestock, water management, and forest and ecosystem sectors. As a result, it was prospected that vulnerability of Puyo increased due to air pollution, ozone concentration, heat wave, and cold wave in the health sector, and the vulnerability of roads and infrastructure due to heavy snow and flooding in the disaster sector. These factors will negatively affect the residents' livability and decrease the manpower and financial capability of Puyo as a local small city. In addition, this negative change is expected to directly or indirectly damage Puyo's historical resources. Air pollutants, heat waves, and cold waves cause long-term deterioration to materials of cultural heritage, and heavy snow and torrential rains threaten structure of the heritage. Next, please. Let's look at the urban development plans of Puyo County. Puyo County established the Conservation and Development Plan of Ancient Capital Cities in 2017. Puyo tried to establish a balanced urban environment of a historical space. Now, most are tourism resources and daily spaces where residential areas as the key direction, while preserving a strong identity as a historical city and consistently reflecting it in various levels of plannings. The historic spaces, which are mainly touristic resources, are special conservation area in green color, and the daily spaces which are related to residential livability are the development area in yellow color. Next, please. The plan includes preserving the historical and cultural environment, in designating and lifting the district, promoting and laying the foundation for the tourism industry, promoting the international exchanges, resident support projects, migration measures, and securing funds. So in particular, Puyo sets three main goals. First is to restore the historical environment. Second is to restore regional vitality using the capital city branding. Third is to improve the living environment of residents. So next, please. The spatial environmental strategic plans were established with the aim of establishing identity as a historical city, considering the regional characteristics of Puyo, restoring image of capital city, and improving the quality of the daily life of residents. In particular, it is intended to create a future city image of Puyo by creating an integrated plan for regional revitalization while preserving cultural heritage and historical environment comprehensively. It aims to create an eco-friendly city space by utilizing the Pengma River, the main pillar of the Puyo's natural scenery, and by creating enough of green areas in the historic city center. In particular, in-city greening is planned to connect Kungnamji, Cheongrimsaji temple site and Pusosan mountain fortress area, which are the most coastal resources. And while the aforementioned conservation and development plan of ancient capital cities focused on establishing the identity and and image of Buyeo and a historical city. This spatial environmental strategic plan focuses on the creation of a natural-friendly image of Buyeo. The main goal is to create a walkable garden city by linking historic spots and green areas and improving pedestrian access, as well as creating a national garden along the Bangma River, utilizing historical resources of Gungnamji and Gwangbukni, expanding green spaces between Busosanjeong Fortress area and Kumseongsan Mountain. Next, please. Since the 2000s, Buyeo has been already started some designing and implementing their plans. A large-scale tourism red leisure park and green parks have been established along the riverside. In addition, Gungnamji area has already been used as a lotus park and working trail after its excavation and long-term maintenance works. The archaeological site in Gwangbukni is currently under excavation, so it is likely to be used as a public space after the excavation is completed. Next, please. Since the purpose of the above two plans is to preserve the historical environment and improve the residential environment, climate change related programs were not considered in the plans. However, among the country planned programs, there are a possibility that climate-friendly elements can be reflected in the programs. For example, historic park, cultural plaza, and bicycle park projects can directly increase climate change adaptation and mitigation by means of tree planting, ground unpaving, eco-friendly building materials, energy-free toilet construction, so on, in the projects when implementing. In addition, by widely used bicycles as main within city's vehicle will reduce carbon emission, which are the source of a greenhouse effect. Next, please. The risk of climate change in Buyeo has been rising, increased air pollution, air pollutants and ozone, increased heat waves and cold waves, increased heavy snow and flooding, decreased the productivity of animal and fruits, increase of maintenance costs, and increased the forest fires and reduced coniferous trees. The detailed urban planning projects mentioned above are projects that can mitigate the risk of these things like air pollutants, heat waves, so on. Although the urban plan does not intentionally reflect the response to climate change directly, it can be seen that climate change mitigation factors naturally molded into urban plannings by creating an eco-friendly city as a strategy in the future vision and basic plan in consideration of the identity and regional characteristics of Buyeo. Next, please. These are the conclusion. Thank you for attention.
Thank you, Professor Kim. Such a wonderful presentation. I think that we do not have enough time to deliver all of our research outcomes. But I think that just given brief times, maybe we do our best to give our findings to all of this international community and our Heritopolis friend. And I think that the heritage itself is part of the urban planning process. So the yesterday discussion, the Francesco Bandarin told us that the most appropriate field, academic field, might be urban planning. When we combine the heritage and the urban planning, it gets the power to change something and implement the heritage itself. So I think that the Korean World Heritage Site example would be the best evidences out of that. So now I have a very limited time schedule, but at least some of you has any comment or questions, I'd like to get yours comment or questions. Anybody? Okay, no one raised a hand. So I'd like to close our session now. And then thank you all for our participants and also our audiences. I will see you soon again. And we have a 20-minute break. Then we'll resume our session 5 starting around 4:30. So we have a little bit behind the schedule, 10 minutes behind, but that's okay. Okay, see you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Choi.
Thank you, Klaus Peter. Bye. See you soon.
Merge to, 5 and 6 might merge together. We had an incredible lunch, but it is, I think that Antonella feels that exactly Italy in Korea. And then with the snow for David here in London, so everybody should feel at home. Okay. Just, I think that we also have Wendu on online from Jakarta, and like to welcome her. And I think that we just have a few minutes of update, and then we'll move on to the content and looking at the activities of the Heritopolis. So over the past day and a half, we've managed to set up we will be setting up a society, what will be called the Heritopolis Society, or the Society for Heritopolis. We have then, Seoul will be our secretariat for the next 5 years. So therefore we have an opportunity of a renewal of other places as well to take on board. We will also setting up a series of open-ended working groups to invite people in the consortium to join. The working groups essentially will be looking at a framework, which will be more of a mission statement, which we would like to do. What is the framework of heritage and the metropolis? It will tend to look at definitions, actors, tools, and cooperation. And there'll also be a call for action, which will sort of give us our roadmap for the next years. We then also have set up a group which will look at the institutional format, and that will look at the connections and the relationships with other metropolis activities, whether it is ICLEI, whether it is UNESCO, whether it is others. But I think that there's so many players around that we do need to see exactly how we can then manage and link to other actors. The third one will be, David will lead, but it is open-ended. We'll look at the forum and the research subjects, of which we'll open up our session 5 now. The fourth one will essentially start off as a working group on setting up the society, and that will be Jay from Konkuk University and Rafa. Perhaps you can just turn the camera around and say hello to Rafa.
Hello.
No, not yet. The camera's not moved around.
Hello, everyone.
Okay. Thank you.
Rafa
Okay,
here,
so missing.
there.
Good. Okay, so thank you. So that was the decisions, the operative decisions that we've made. We also then discussed exactly how we're going to then create membership, and the membership essentially will be people which will then support a particular challenge, a particular research, a particular study. So therefore, the issues of money are not the first or primary issue, but in the issue of content. We've also set up the timetable for 2023-2024, of which we're hoping to have a meeting either in Istanbul and or Bahrain in spring, and that will be then to discuss all these issues together. We will all meet hopefully in Nairobi at the General Assembly, and hopefully we will already have a side event. We will then work towards a resolution at the General Assembly within the Metro Hub umbrella that will have one paragraph which will deal with the Metropolitan Heritage Framework. And I think that it will mainstream our activities. We have all been invited to Tonji University to WITRAP in October, where we will celebrate Metropolitan Day or Metropolitan Week in the second week of October. So please, everybody is invited to put that in the diary, but we'll make minutes of all this meeting and then everybody will have this opportunity. So I think this really puts exactly our working 2 days and or day and a half. And now we're opening up a discussion. People have joined us on and off, depending on the time zone. So we welcome 1, 2, 3 people each time. And I can see Klaus Petter here, and I have to get my glasses. Jihon is here. And Chen from this thing, right? Okay, great. Okay, so let's move on. I think that the session today must speak about content, and there's going to be content bottom up, which will come from each of the proposals from the research institutes or from the metropolitan areas. But on the other hand, we've also got some top-down, which have evolved from our first round of global reporting. So I hand over to David to give us the first series of headings, which we'll be able to debate and then consider how we can then mainstream them within the consortium. Over to you.
Thanks, Mike. Yes, we summarized again yesterday the main conclusions from the first draft of the report based on the comparative assessment of the 9 metropolises that submitted information. And this will be revised and updated in January, February, once we have received the reports of the 5 or 6 additional cities that have committed to doing that. None has reached me yet, but we still have
Shanghai.
Well, that came just too late to be included, but I mean recently none of the others has arrived. So hopefully they will in the next 3 or 4 weeks that we can include them. Then that revision will enable us to plot some next steps in terms of the emerging themes, and I'll summarize them in a moment as they are right now. But we said that these would be discussed in greater detail at hopefully the Istanbul meeting in the Northern Hemisphere spring, as Mike just said. And we will then also take forward discussion about how to organize the research. We spoke in this morning session, that's Seoul time, so while many of you were sleeping, about alternative designs for grouping. And Danielle from Rio de Janeiro, who participated, reflected the thinking of many of the researchers that a thematic basis for that organization would be better than a sort of geographical regional one, although in fact the themes that emerge might well have a large regional bias because of shared historic heritage or shared contemporary concerns or priorities, but that's fine. And we'll try to organize all of that during the Istanbul meeting in the spring, and then find people to drive those forward as well. The other step that we have agreed, in fact, already some months ago, is that on the basis of this second version of the report, the expanded report, we would distill a summary into an academic paper, which would be published in an appropriate journal, and we have not yet discussed which journal that might be. We'll do that early next year, and that would be the first kind of intellectual statement that we publish on behalf of Heritopolis. Again, we'll think about it more and circulate information, and then we'll have an update at the Istanbul meeting. So the key conclusions from the first draft of the report as it currently exists is that each of the 9 cities has many distinctive features, but there was some scope for generalization. More or less, the older metropolises in especially the high-income countries tend to have existed for quite a long time, and therefore to have structures and responsibilities, at least with respect to natural heritage, and generally at the strategic. But the powers and the detailed work that tends to take place is at the sub-metropolitan level. In other words, within the individual municipalities or other local government units, rather than within the metropolitan authority as such. The one important exception is Seoul, which is where we're sitting now, which has a well-established and well-resourced metropolitan government, and actually some of the most comprehensive integrated natural and cultural heritage roles and responsibilities of any of the cities that has reported. What I think comes out of that is that the central issue that explains how this works in each urban context, metropolitan context, is the nature, the balance, and the appropriateness of the divisions of powers, responsibility, and resources for addressing natural and cultural heritage as between the national, the regional, and the local government in each context. That varies hugely between countries, and in some countries it even varies quite substantially between cities, particularly between the largest cities, which are often metropolitan, and smaller and intermediate ones, which tend not to have that sort of structure and very often don't have those sorts of powers and responsibilities. But even within the ones where these functions are quite well evident and sometimes function quite effectively, there is often a big difference between the major or rump municipality at the heart of the city, usually the old historical part, which has the most resources, has the most established municipality, the largest number of personnel dealing with these issues, whereas the ones in the smaller, perhaps the more recently established municipalities on the outskirts of the city, the suburbs, and into the peri-urban area, it's much more mixed. Maybe they don't prioritize heritage quite so much. If they do, it tends to be natural heritage. And of course, they're dealing with a mixture of classic urban, suburban, peri-urban, and even in some cases, rural issues, which makes for sometimes an uncomfortable mixture of things within what are still urban municipalities. Where these functions and strategies and policies to address heritage have existed for a long time, they tend to have evolved over time from a focus on the individual monuments and sites to a more integrated and area-based or geographically based approach to conservation, which does quite often then combine both natural and cultural heritage, but the extent to which it includes intangible heritage varies quite considerably. Where heritage regimes of this kind exist, it's also true that in the majority of situations, they are strongly historically focused. In other words, they look backwards about conserving or preserving, encouraging visitors to heritage sites, parks, museums, whatever facilities exist, rather than being, as we are hoping to shift discourse and practice into a more forward-looking, future-oriented perspective, which takes heritage as part of the living present-day experience and then works that in with other elements into future-oriented sustainability and resilience strategies. So we're hoping that that becomes a key part of our work in the themes that will be developed for future research and for applying for research grants. The other key issues, just to highlight finally, are a big question about whether, if at all, indigenous or traditional cultural sites and monuments, events, and intangible heritage, intangible practices are included within the metropolitan approach to heritage. In many cases, they are not, they're highly marginalized, but this raises one of the challenges which I think, again, would serve us well as a major research focus about how indigeneity, tradition are understood and included or codified within the respective metropolitan and national contexts. In many of our cities, because of imperial, colonial, or other such conflicted histories, there tends to be highly unequal social integration, economic power, and political representation of many of the smaller, more marginalized communities, whereas in one or two, again, like Seoul, which are ethnically and culturally much more homogeneous, these issues are perhaps less significant. It's also true, finally, that material or tangible assets, particularly physical monuments, specific sites of cultural or historical significance, which can include green open spaces, are generally much better covered by existing laws, regulations, and so on, than intangible heritage assets. So that might be another focus that people would wish to research, and how they can be better included and integrated within the wider thematic. From the point of view of those marginal communities or marginalized communities, becoming more inclusive will be crucial to gain trust, to gain their participation and a sense of buy-in, if you like, as part of the broader inclusive sustainability and resilience strategies, which, in the words of the New Urban Agenda and Agenda 2030, leave no one behind. The final issue is one about how appropriately or adequately the metropolitan scale, the strategic authority for whichever metropolis, actually matches the more natural environmental bioregion or watershed region, which is exemplified, for example, the work in Paris of Eric's Institute of the Paris region. And again, I think for all the reasons that we're familiar with in terms of environmental sustainability, sustainability of water resources, catchment management, nature-based solutions, natural capital, ecosystem service, all these other related terms and approaches need to be integrated in a forward-looking sustainability resilience strategy. So again, there's a pointer for a theme. Yes, I think I'll leave it there, and perhaps we can open up for questions.
Can you repeat, please, the 9 cities?
9 cities: Tel Aviv, Seoul, London, Paris, Rio, Buenos Aires, Milan, Moscow, Delhi. The ones which are perhaps coming is Shanghai, Mombasa, Istanbul, Barcelona, Sydney.
And Krakow, definitely.
Yes.
No one from Arab countries, right?
Oh, Bahrain, we say yes.
But it is coming or it now coming?
They're coming. Also that we will be proactive. So we've already discussed the idea of Singapore and others. So we bring people on through a commitment. So it is negotiating. So I think that if Eric opened up the door to 1 or 2 places, we're beginning to talk. You'll suggest the issue of Singapore, and then we'll begin to talk and then see exactly where it comes together.
Yes, it was just because I think that the messages are key, but if we wanted to make it a global representative, we will need at least 2 per region. So in the sample, in the coming ones, we should to take that into account.
Yeah, well, I think that this is, I mean, I think we also have, Wendu was, we spoke with her and she had made not yet a commitment, but yes, that she thought that Jakarta would be possible. We had spoken to Hassan in Marrakesh and he was thinking of Casablanca too, but what? North America,
We
well,
have New York.
I think Francesco, well, so I think that if Francesco would do that, I think that perhaps we should, who spoke with Mario? You spoke to Mario today? Somebody spoke to Mario on that. No?
I simply sent greetings.
Greetings. Oh.
That was just a message on LinkedIn.
Oh. I don't know whether, in fact, we would have whether Montreal would be interested.
Yes, I can put you in contact with the CMM.
And it's this alerts. So yeah. It's these alerts which
very, very serious.
the serious situation.
Snow warning.
Snow warning.
For your slide,
Right.
not for the club.
Okay. I think that we have to be proactive in dealing with it, not just simply okay, who's coming. And I think that Rafa's comment that we should make sure that we've got a really good balance at the beginning. Out of interest, we took the 50 samples of the we took the 50, and then we tried to link them to dovetail with the ones which are being done on the 50 samples. Whether this is still relevant, I don't know, but I do want to now try to summarize the headings which came from David's comments and ask you whether in fact you could say, well, what are the subjects of these if you were to categorize them within the metro hub, which are the ones that you think that the metro hub has got. So we're coming from an issue of looking at from heritage and what are the ones which the metro hub would look, and can we see exactly highlight really hotspots? This is the idea.
I see several relations with the governance policy. No.
So let me just think. I think some of the points which are raised, and I think that we have to see whether it appears in the frame, how that might appear in the framework. Again, it doesn't have to. It's like a shopping list. A kid in a toy shop. We like it all. So the options are that looking at systems approach, which were very important. It came out of a lot of ideas. Culture and nature was in fact the terminology of heritage, but I do believe that linking urban and rural, although urban and rural culture and nature are not synonymous. However, the new urban agenda is the issue, and the metropolis is the the very epitome of that liminal spaces, which in fact reaches beyond the city, which can include both nature and rural. So I think that this is, to my mind, that's a really critical issue. Culture and nature is a language which we might use in heritage, but otherwise you want to into
UN Habitat actually has a working group specifically on rural-urban linkages, and I'm actually connected with it.
Well, that's great.
It is also depending on premises.
Exactly.
Great. Okay, this is what we want to flag now in the ones which are going to have these sort of connections. David spoke about future heritage, and that's something which Antonella also highlighted yesterday. And I think that we have to position ourselves of not looking at managing the past, but in fact looking at the future.
Regarding what David said, I feel that there is something lacking, probably because it's an analysis of the report, but I really think that the word project must be present. So Heritopolis, so metropolitan heritage, is a tool for a project. Is a tool for a project. So until now, for example, when we spoke about the fact that some community share some historical issue, in reality, thinking about colonial country, they also share some real practices on the territories. Because when we speak as a designer, because at the end, one of the target is the metropolitan agent, but I think that Heritopolis should give some insight for project. And so, because as Eric showed us, what we have to deal with as architect and urban designer are new build form types, new morphotypes, or new linkage urban-rural patterns. So ancient practices, otros saberes, that we have to implement, and not only intangible capacity of indigenous to work on their territory, if is it possible to introduce some issue related to the fact that practices on the ground that are marked on the ground because we have signed on a map that are values. Because I think that what Eric suggests us is how is possible to identify the attribute, the value, the metropolitan attribute that should change the reality of the element that already now we have, because we will manipulate. It's a matter of fact that we will manipulate.
I'm sure that's accurate, but remember that this that I've just reported on was an analysis of the reports received, which in turn reflected the questionnaires as we set them.
See, I said that that is a part, but I do think that you should look at the report as a report, and it's a point of view that I really appreciate. But in the moment in which you define the report of the report, try to foster the element that should be useful for a project.
But that's exactly where the next stage of discussion in the run-up to and at Istanbul will be so crucial, because that's where we merge that with other issues and priorities which will come from the cities that have not yet reported, or indeed those who will not report but will be part of our network.
Yeah, I think that let's if you just allow me just to go through the whole list so as to be able to see where it is, give the opportunity people on the screen to say also to react to it. So systems approach, culture and nature, I extend that to beyond that of rural and urban, and that's already a flagged subject with UN Habitat. Future heritage, governance, and governance has got lots of subheadings to international mechanisms, practices, SDGs, New Urban Agenda, HUL. Colonial legacies was another one which was highlighted, intangible practices in its wider understanding, digital technologies, and I would add socio-political transformations as opposed to socio-economic transformations, and put economics and sustainable development together as business. And I think that highlights some of the issues which I've been trying to push, is that the idea of then the triple helix, which we'll try and adopt so as to bring business interests and not just simply but sustainable business in the format. So I think that we've got 9. We can have 7 plus or minus 2. So we've got 7 plus 2. We've got nine headings, which might have come. We would like, first of all, if I'd ask Rafa to say what are the sort of things like the linking of urban and rural, what sort of the issues that we could be able to make a difference? What are the subjects which might be under the reporting or part of the decade of action which UN Habitat is doing, which these parts could actually be more integrative in?
I think that now it's difficult to see all the linkages, but we can maybe use the SDG 11 or the targets of the SDG 11, the commitments from the new urban agenda in order to make the proper linkages, no? But of course, as I was saying before, I initially see several links with at least 3 of our strong areas of work, which are governance, policy, and planning. But of course, we need to analyze deeper and refine. No, but maybe David can share all the detailed key messages with us, and we can start to make the linkages. I think that we should to take advantage also for doing what Antonella was proposing, that is trying to find some way to boost SDG implementation through those messages. No, those messages should give us like the guidelines, the direction to boosting the SDG implementation, which is at the end the purpose of the decade of action. No?
One of the subsets of questions which has been analyzed, although I didn't mention them here, was the extent to which the SDGs and the urban agenda were identified in the respective metropolises, and that varies greatly. Some map on quite nicely, others have more or less ignored them, and everything in between.
Yes, and specifically with the targets, we need to make the exercise with the targets, because if you link it with maybe with the name of the SDG is a little vague, no? So we need to go deeper and make it with the targets, but we can do it afterwards.
And also the concept of the indicator, I think that because right now indicator at the local scale doesn't work. There is. Can I
just let me just say that. On the issue of India, you're so right. In fact, but we have to notice that UNESCO did try to actually create then qualitative indicators for cultural aspects. There was which came out in 2019. So I think that we have to build on issues. I think that they also felt that there was a need to move away from quantitative to qualitative, but what are they? Okay, so things have become measurable. Can you measure quality as opposed just simply measuring quantity? Okay, sorry, but it was important just to.
Yes, we try to make an indicator, but starting from open data that we have to specialize, and at the metropolitan scale, that I do think that are really different from the urban scale. So I appreciated also any habitat indicators we use, but in some cases are very far away from what we have to analyze in some neglected areas that are not only peri-urban, but very far away from in the metropolitan region anyway. There is in the report some reference regarding the scale. So at which scale? Because you said, and I absolutely agree, and that is the reason why we should territorialize SDGs with the heritage, under the heritage umbrella. You spoke about the fact that it's a municipality scale in which we really touch the ground. But since we think that the metropolis is a system, in which way we should produce, I have to go deep into what you said yesterday, a system of places, or places as a system, because I have to go deep. I really don't grasp totally the differences, and I think that is important.
So let's give Jay then the possibility to relate to that, perhaps to expand on it and his thoughts.
Maybe if you want to using the territorialization, probably metropolis itself is also, as well as the heritage itself, needs some kind of territorialization idea. And I think that maybe we need to dig in that one, but not just to focus on the kind of point stuff like monument and the certain the area. Instead of that, we have to take care of the whole the floors and the functions of each places, connecting with some kind of the other areas too. That is, I think, that the systems approach, I guess. And also, I like to add up one more factor is the how making us attractive to others. How making us Heritopolis team attractive to others, because I like to deal with some more hard issues in here. Maybe we trap here, maybe Dr. Mu is here. And also there are many category 2 centers around the World Heritage stuff. So better to mention some World Heritage umbrella too. World Heritage right now is not only a branding names, but also there are many issues outside of the politicalization. There are issues like the conservation, issues like education, issues like the interpretation and everything. And also those kind of World Heritage also carry on some kind of the memory of the places too. So it's intangible heritage. So better to get some term like the World Heritage, maybe within the framework like the heritage urbanism also sort of more broad sense.
I'm trying to wean Francesco off World Heritage,
it's fine.
Yeah,
but I think there is a dimension that we have a bit forgotten in territorialization is necessary, but we have to look at the time dimension, because we are looking somehow at all the traces that have made the metropolis, and if we don't look at the time dimension, we will never find them. We will never find things that could become, say, structural supports of heritage processes.
That is diachronic in a lot of cases. We have area in the metropolitan region that remains still for a lot of time and then restart as a deposit of
you can imagine there are, for instance, all the infrastructures in the metropolis, they got a long history, and they could become, we've seen just one, just now, the thing. So that is, for instance, a new heritage that comes from an ancient infrastructure. All the evolution of the housing types and the models of habitation and so on. I mean, there are, you name it, there are millions. The expos, the special projects, the big initiatives that have shaped the metropolis a long time. So these have become really elements of structural elements of a heritage policy and heritage strategy, because they can become points of aggregation. I think also that we could also in the same chapter talk about memory, because that's what also makes cities and a long time, and see how we deal with this issue, which is not an easy one, but certainly has a big role.
Sorry, Francesco, but how is it possible to speak about the memory?
When I say memory, I mean
memory of
collective memory.
But in the metropolis, which is a demos of a metropolis, should...
First of all, there maybe have been many demos, and there are demos today, collectivities, communities, and so on, new and old. No, I don't think it's a problem.
I mean, this is one thing which I had mentioned, in fact, that whether in fact the metropolis is accumulation of the parts. Because it is a dynamic situation, parts of the city which were never part of the metropolis suddenly come together, and therefore they create a collective memory is an issue which we need to do. But first of all, Eric and then David.
To go to the same way, I think the idea is to have something between what is permanent and what is changing. And when we take a moment today, for example, we make an analysis of the metropolis, we can say in the long term, so with the time, there is something which is permanent and the other which is changing from time to time. And because there is a lot of change in the metropolis, there is a lot of movement. We change the location of some functions. There is some addition, some restriction, etc. And there is other thing that remains. So it's not only an accumulation. There is, it is an accumulation, but it is also a lot of change that we have in the. So this is one point.
David,
there is a wonderful, and it's a very recent example of how intangible heritage, but also marginalized heritage can be effectively incorporated into metropolis. And this applies in New Zealand, in Australia, in Canada, and it's starting now in South Africa, where before international sporting events like a test match in rugby or football or the Olympics, they pay homage and acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which the sporting event is taking place. And they often have indigenous leaders leading that and invoking a prayer or a blessing on everybody assembled in a very sort of contemporary cosmopolitan way. And that, I think, encapsulates this idea of recovering what has been lost or written out of the history, but pointing the way into the future. That's just one example of the sorts of things. And that is memory. It's intangible. You won't find it in planning codes or documents, but symbolically, it is highly, highly important. And I'm sure we'll know more of these when we come to explore them. But I also just want to respond to Antonella about the scale. And so the important work that therefore needs to be done, because much of this at the moment is undertaken by the individual municipalities rather than the metropolitan strategic scale, is to ensure that the metropolitan scale can play an appropriate role. The problem when you have it down at the level of the individual municipal units, bearing in mind that it's a generalization, but the metropolis around the world tends to have between about 10 or 12 and 60, 70 individual municipalities, depending on the scale and so on. So in that situation, if there's no metropolitan strategic integration, you cannot have an integrated or coherent policy. It stops at one municipal boundary to the next. So there is a key role, and this is work in each country where they need to think and re-examine what is in terms of laws, powers, regulations, and make sure that they can be adapted to what is needed to do this in an appropriate way. And that comes back to governance, and that, of course, is one of the key foci of UN Habitat. They have a well-developed urban law program under Robert Louis Leckrington. There is even the urban law toolbox that Gianluca Crespi has developed. There are many of these things that we need to include in what we're doing with the mapping that Mike and Rafa were talking about.
Just a quick question, because I don't remember in this moment, sorry. Do the survey include some question on intangible heritage or not?
Yes, the extent to which it is already there and to which people think it's a priority that should be there.
Okay, and did you mention some key message on intangible heritage?
Mainly that it's not adequately represented, and that's where there's work to do.
Yeah, we have a question from another participant, Viendu Nuyanti, and she's asking the three questions. The role of ICH, intangible cultural heritage, in Heritopolis ESP living heritage in the transforming urban space. So the role of ICH in transforming the urban heritage. That's the first question. Second question is the role of also the ICH and living heritage in preserving the city identity. So living heritage and the city identity. And the third question is about the link of tourism in heritage conservation. So how we put the tourism issues in relation to the Heritopolis. She, I think, made a good point.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll
There is a
reorganize. I can see that. Let me reorganize then the order of people. So I would, perhaps Francesco would like to address these three questions, or at least one of them. Somebody would like to address the questions. No?
If I
Yeah. That's okay.
But this works.
Yeah, it's okay.
I think that she's right. I mean, these are three dimensions that we can't somehow. Maybe we can incorporate it in the other category, but certainly they're constituents of the modern identity of a large metropolis. You know, it's. I think we are witnessing, for instance, now this World Cup. You know, but these events, for instance, the Olympics, the Expos. I mean, London became a world metropolis in 1851 when they opened up the Crystal Palace. So these are elements that really influence it. So also that kind of history should be taken into consideration. Now, tourism per se we have to see, because it's a different, but it certainly is a great economic process. So yes, I think we should expand into these other things. Perhaps to recategorize.
Okay, so I just also like to look on the large scale events. That's what Joanna, the Krakow team are working on. They've got an EU project, and they're looking at the residual effects of large scale events in heritage cities. So that's exactly one of the subjects. This is the sort of thing which could come from one of the.
There are many PhD theses on this.
She's
many.
She's working on this. It's a big team working on it, and that's an interesting one.
It's a very mature part of the analysis.
Right. So let's give Klaus Petter. He's raised his hand. So and then ask Giron if she'd also like it. So Klaus Petter, you have the screen.
No, we don't hear.
You're mute.
Klaus Petter.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think that we should. I think the points that Windu has mentioned. I think let's have a round and then try to address them in a comprehensive way. Okay, Klaus Petter.
Yeah. Thank you for giving me the floor, and I think I don't have it now in mind. So the four aspects we just discussed, but I know living. Here it's the role of living heritage in transforming urban space, living heritage in preserving the city identity. Okay, I think the living heritage is something which is stressed here, and I think it is it's a main point where we have to focus on, and I think it's we did not in the survey we should go more intensely on this subject, and I think it belongs also to one of the 9 topics Michael referred to, like the social and political developments, and under the social, and both are living heritage is in this. I wanted to start my point or my comment about the new heritage and the attributes of new heritage, like infrastructure, memory, what Francesco mentioned. And I think yesterday we were really efficient in pointing out these new attributes. So it's better than before. And I think also important is the point Eric now stressed, the changes in these new heritage elements. so these are not, and I think because metropolis is even more than the normal cities, the changes the challenges are more vibrant, and so I think this point of change we should focus on. And then, of course, as I was listening to the last session we had about the World Heritage, and I think we saw about the changes of living heritage in the presentations of the World Heritage, but I think what was not so clear, or what we should do research on this, how this World Heritage, this living heritage in the World Heritage presentations we heard in the last session, how is it linked to metropolitan? So it was not so clear for me. Are these examples of World Heritage in World Heritage areas in Korea? Are there really metropolis or below? But I think this what always Che is focusing on, World Heritage and metropolis. I think we should also focus on this. Thank you.
Jihan, you want to make some comments? No, you're okay. I think that perhaps also seeing that we're hoping to have a secretariat in Korea, I think that the secretariat will have a prerogative to actually suggest subjects which is close to their heart. What do you think that if we were like we could help Chris in providing discussion comparisons which would be helpful specifically for Korea? And I think that this is the prerogative of the host secretariat. I think that this will be an important point. We'll be able to say, yes, we are. Korea is giving us a secretariat, and we are going to give them the first refusal on subjects.
Okay, can you turn the, okay. I think that why I accept the secretariat role in the incoming 5 years is because that I think the Heritopolis idea is very valuable idea, and no one ever digging deeply about this, how we combining this heritage idea with the metropolis itself. I'm an urban geographer, so I'm quite have certain the knowledge about the large cities and also the cities. And also recently, as I working for the World Heritage nomination process and the evaluation process, then I'm just interested in the World Heritage and also the place itself, because all the heritage is surrounded by the place. Place is simply space with experience. So I like to figure out the heritage itself from the collective memory, invisible, the heritage idea, just in addition to this tangible, the heritage idea too. So maybe I'm quite have pretty much the support Professor Mike Turner and Professor Francesco Bendere's idea to develop this kind of the international, the global society, just working together to conserve and to study the heritage within the metropolis and also metropolis as a heritage. This is why I volunteered to work for the Secretariat Office, no more else. And then here we have no fund, no money to operating this. But I think that we need to take step by step. Just one spoon cannot make you feel out of the hungry. I mean, that's our old saying that. If you feel like hungry, you need to take several times the spoons from your dishes to your mouth, not just one time. So I think that this is good starting point, just making some consensus about the notion of the Heritopolis and what it should do for the next step. So maybe we need some kind of the registration to be recognized as a formal the entities in the world. So in other words, this is formalization process. So maybe in Korea, we have some kind of the research framework easily to register as a research society or research associations. So there is high possibility that we can register the Heritopolis Society in the Korean Research Institutional Framework. It means that we can, using our framework, to making some MOU with the other global institutions, and also we may apply for the research fund to the Korea Research Institute. So that's the strategy, I think. And also the themes, maybe we have 25 different persons representing the different metropolises. We may bring up over 100 different research ideas, I'm quite sure. But here, what we need to do is how do we categorize it? And step by step, from the umbrella concept to the detailed ideas for the research. I received the message from the Lucia, from the Argentina, and she actually giving me 2 different files. One is about her research idea, research project idea. The other one is that what she can do. This is perfect model, I think. And she just said that everything she can do, making us more attractive to others. So I may asking all our members to give me sending out the secretariat office like that, explain about what she or he wants to study or research and what she can do in the future. And then I like to put all those information together, and then just using the website, the heritopolis.org, that might be very efficient way of communication together, and to put all our members' information and then contact numbers and contact information, then we can get together anytime we have a certain proposal for research in global world. And then we instantly creating a research group together, making some global comparative analysis to fill out the demand from the each different countries. In Korea, I think that you know that you already just take a little excursion here and feel like that this is one of the advanced society in the world. But I always feel like that we are so isolated from the global trend because all in Korea, they just satisfy themselves. Like, okay, this is it. Okay, domestically, we have no problem at all. So they never try to open their eyes to the outside world. We have a certain role in the global neighborhood. Korea, we get through all of the difficult times and the harder times from the ashes, and we called it the Han-River miracle. Then right now we have a number 10 the economic country, number 8 in military power. But during this process, we just focus on ourselves, never turn our attention to outside world. Maybe I think that this is time we can share our own experience to the international society. There are many, many different society who need our own experience. We can teach them, we can give them an education program, how we success, how we making concessions, and how we do something successfully. And Jiyeon is there. She is a good example for our Korean success. She is quite internationalized, but she never go abroad for studying. She studied in Korea only, but you know that her English is perfect, better than me. So I think that this is why. So, and there might be Korean people right now, if people started talking about the heritage in other society, in other cultures, they never care. Yeah, that's what they used to. But if people try to speak about some World Heritage stuff, the people try to attend it. Okay, World Heritage, we all know that. What is the World Heritage? There is a big dispute between our neighbor country, and then probably that would be the hot issues too. China is same, I know that. All of East Asian countries, probably we had the same situation. We want brandings for the heritage because we are so isolated quite a long time period. You know, the China until late 1970s, they closed the door, we called it Iron Curtain. Japan, yeah, after the Second World War, everybody blamed Japan. You just sort of, you know, Korea, we get through the Korean War. All we has a kind of demand how we protect our own heritage and how we let the other society knows the precious the heritage. Maybe this is why we need branding names. Branding names is World Heritage. That's quite a different situation from the European countries. European countries is quite well known throughout the elite, the World Heritage site, like the Catholic Church and all fancy stuff based on the Occidental culture. But the Oriental culture has been long times ignored from the international society. You know that China is the first country ever invented the gunpowder, papers. Yeah, but nobody never recognized that one. And then, so I think that this is time right now we can get together and doing something together and complementary together. So Heritopolis is maybe a very valuable one. Why? Heritopolis, heritage and the metropolis combining tangible heritage, intangible heritage, living environment, urban society. And right now we need to take a common reaction against the global challenges. We all just confront the climate change. We said the red dust in England, the yellow dust in Korea. We all just suffered from the natural disaster. And how we using heritage to protect ourselves from the collective memory against this kind of the challenges, I think, Mike. So this is why I just accept it.
I'm glad it's recorded because we can use that text as part of the preamble.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance to talk.
I think that if Wandu is still online, is that perhaps she would like to say something. I
just want to respond to the question on tourism.
Yes.
Because we did not have an explicit question asking about that in the questionnaires, but several of the questions provided space and the opportunity which some cities used to report on that. And the key way in which that, I guess, was expressed was that where elements of heritage were important tourist sites or destinations and part of policies, they tended to be higher valued assets and resources. Quite often they were revenue generating. But on the other hand, there was concern, and again, particularly with respect to elements of indigenous or so-called traditional practice and intangibles, that when they do become marketized as part of international tourist strategies, they somehow become caricatured, or there's a risk of them becoming caricatured in a kind of tame way, packaged for tourism rather than actual real expression of the indigenous culture. So there's a real tension there.
Does Wandu want to speak or not? Because I can't see her on the screen. No.
Wandu, are you online? Could you open your camera? Then we can see you.
No, okay.
Is it okay for you? Turn on your camera. Wandu? she didn't respond. Oh, now she is. Okay, good to see
Sorry,
you.
yeah.
Hello.
Hello, good to see you. I'm sorry, the
Thanks for
connection
the
is
comment
not,
and question.
yeah, the connection is not really good because it's so thunderstorm and raining so hard over here. So I don't know if you can hear me, my voice or not. Just as ups and downs. But anyway, I already put my sort of not question, but things that need to be taken into account, which is first is how the role of ICH in the transformation of the Heritopolis, the space of the Heritopolis, especially dealing with living heritage. And then also the identity, because so much the Heritopolis, the identity is the one that created sense of belonging of the community, and they identified, associated with my space, with our space, and that the role of living heritage is so vital in this connection. So especially now, you know, cases like in Indonesia, where the millennials is very much dominant as a community in the Heritopolis, and the behavior, the space, the creativity, the creative space that they're creating, you know, among the Heritopolis is such a interesting phenomena to look into carefully. So I think those are the things that for cases like in Jakarta, Indonesia, becoming more and more obvious, yeah, in the role of it in transforming the Heritopolis into the layer after layer after layer of the preservation and conservation. So those are things that very rare I see still in the research, and I think probably one of the things that should be taken into account in this strategic issues identification of the Heritopolis. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And we're looking forward perhaps that you'll have the opportunity of adding these comments in the report on Jakarta, which we hope that you'll be able to manage and we'll be able to include this in our updated global survey. So just to bring you on board is that we are hoping to have this and bring this to the table at the General Assembly in Nairobi of UN Habitat. So I think it's important. We must see Jakarta there. It would not be complete without Jakarta.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we'll do.
And John Jakarta as well, of course.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we'll do.
Right. I add something. Because I think that we have to return back to something that Francesco pointed out yesterday about the layers that compose the metropolitan landscape, that from my point of view is really connected with the idea of the territorialization of the SDGs. I mean, I don't think personally, but with my experience in metropolitan dimension project, what we are really looking for are the element that allows the interdependencies among these landscapes. So if we are able to define which are the elements that they are related to the component of the metropolis that allow us to produce that interdependencies among scale, that is something that from one point of view has to be related to the target of the SDGs integration, but also should give an answer to the point of the tourism, as we have done in that thesis on China. So I do think that we have to revert the statement of World Bank. So we have to have a local knowledge for a global awareness and not vice versa. And then, so we have to elevate the problem that we have at the local scale. And that is something that I learned from Murat when he spoke to me about the pillar of the first bridge in Istanbul. And you said the pillar was allow Ortaköy to explode. No? So it's a system that has this level, but allows the local reason of Ortaköy to be elevated to another scale. But then we have to give some guideline to the state. So that connection to the state, I think that is important. And we have to return back to the local scale. So the local scale, a resolution of the problem cannot be done at a local scale, but has to be done at a metropolitan scale that has to inform the state governance to return back to the local. This system of feedback, it's something that allows us also to territorialize and implement the target of the SDGs. The last thing is that when we speak about infrastructure memory, in reality, from my point of view, at the metropolitan scale, what is important for the infrastructure is when the infrastructure are dismissed. We have a lot of cases of airport dismissed, rail track dismissed, that unfortunately became bicycle paths. That for me is absurd to translate directly a track with a bicycle path. So what is the material of our work are the neglected spaces. So rural neglection, green infrastructural breakdown, infrastructural dismission. So that is a context in which we have to work.
We were going to be finishing at this session in another 9 minutes, but Murat has come on board and Jana has come on board. We started late, so with your permission, I think that we'll continue for another quarter of an hour. So welcome to Jana and Murat. I'm going to have to just quickly say again exactly where we are, is that specifically for Murat, that we are looking at our schedule for 2023, and we are hoping, we are still wondering exactly the details and timing for the event in Istanbul. But I think that perhaps we should really just hear from you a few words regarding the schedule of the event, because it's an important milestone, because we were thinking that this is where we'll have the opportunity of bringing all the knowledge and drafts of what we've been discussing over the past 2 days for a wider discussion of the consortium, which will be the basis to bring to the UN Habitat General Assembly in June. So perhaps you could first of all update us, and then we'll go back and allow Jana and you to speak a little bit about the forum subjects, because that really is an important part. So Murat, over to you.
Do you hear me? Okay, yeah. So sorry for the late joining because of the problem of hours. I misunderstood the timing. The latest update I had from the municipality was yesterday. I couldn't send you a message because it came last night. The heritage responsible of Istanbul municipality is regularly briefing me on this issue. The Marmara Union of Municipalities and the responsible from the Istanbul municipalities are supporting the events. The venue has been arranged for the meeting. Okay, for the finalized version, they are expecting the finalization of the budget for this year. I will inform you definite dates at the beginning. I hope I will be able to give you definite dates at the beginning of the January, but the prospects are good and the process is advancing okay, positively, I would say. Good. Okay, for this spring meeting in Istanbul. Okay, we will. I am trying to feed fuel to the bureaucratic mechanism of a municipality, and it's working well. I think I will send you good news at the beginning of the next with the new year. Okay. So
do you have possible dates to?
Not yet, but the venue, the area where the conference will be held, held is decided yet now. But for the dates, I will ask them for the finalization of the program as of the end of this month. Okay. By the new year, I will be able to send you the dates. Okay.
Which is the venue, brother?
So it will be in Istanbul. Has a planning agency. It's called the Istanbul Planning Agency. They have the acronym is IPA. They have a campus in an area called Florya. Right next to it, there is a metro station. It's a bit far from the center of the city, but it's a nice place, and it is very accessible through rapid rail service. I think wherever is the accommodation is, it should be accessible very easily. Okay, so
it is the nicest planning agency in the world, huh? Really, because it is in the villas of the previous mayor.
Oh, yes. Eric has been there. Eric has been there for the inauguration of this Istanbul Vision meeting, I think. But it is accessible, and I think Eric would tell you much more than I about the accessibility. It has at its gate the metro station, so it's really easy to go there in a very congested city. Okay.
Great. Any questions on that? No, I think that's good. So we should be all set for that.
Brilliant. Dates.
Sorry. No. I think that let's sort of then go back and give the opportunity of Murat and Jana to speak about some of the subjects or challenges that we feel need to be addressed in the coming 2 years of Heritopolis. We are, just to let you know, that we are hoping to register it as a society. So there'll be a Heritopolis society, which will be a soft structure of activities. So therefore it'll be within the UN Habitat consortium, but nevertheless we'll have then some formal structure by which we could then either access funds or explain ourselves. We are actually going to be setting up some open-ended working groups. The minutes of the meeting will be circulated and people will be invited to join. We're now discussing in the end of this session is the forum, or essentially the subjects which are being debated. We took on board the subjects which came from the global report, which are top down. We gave the floor to the new secretariat, which will be in Seoul. And they've come up with some thoughts about what they see is important. We also have Rafa here from UN Habitat, and also relating to the subjects and issues which are the agenda of UN Habitat. So I think that we would like to hear from you, from Murat and Jana, the sort of subjects and challenges, because we are now saying any new member joining the consortium must come with a challenge, must come with then a project which come with the research of what they're doing. So it's very personal, so you can speak personally about what are the subjects that you are working on, whether it is beyond Istanbul 95 or whether it is beyond the Delhi heritage of Jana. But please, the screen is yours. Murat has already spoken, so we'll give the first round to Jana.
Thank you, Mike. Am I audible?
Yes.
So once again, it's great to be here, and thank you for giving me the platform. And I learned something from Adva yesterday. She was really sweet. She said, though I'm online, I feel hosted. So thank you, Jay, for hosting, and the entire team of Concord University. So once again, and I apologize, I missed quite a bit of the discussion today. But when I entered, I'm glad that the discussion which was going on is the intangible cultural heritage. And I am the national focal point for ICOMOS, India, in its rights-based approach to heritage management. So I'm glad you were discussing intangible, because what has come to mind, I'll give an example of Delhi. So once again, because Delhi heritage. So we are actually breaking the stereotypes, and the traditional puppeteers from Rajasthan, the western state of India, as you would know, they are concentrated in a locality in Delhi. And now, because of the COVID situation, the men had suffered. So now they're breaking boundaries. So we have the first generation of women puppeteers who are ready to perform. So right now, I'm working on a project with this colleague of mine, and we call ourselves the Heritage Collab. It's an informal collective. So we are trying to get some fund. And so what these women are trying to look for is a sustainable employment and also value addition to what they're doing. So being as part of the metropolis, the challenge is that they were living in a informal housing sector. So now that has been demolished. So these community of women puppeteers, along with the entire community of puppeteers, have gone into these what we call transit camps. So I think this is a big challenge that, I mean, of course, the whole, you know, the under the canopy of heritage within metropolis and metropolis as heritage. And I think this is a great thing, and this is one aspect that I would like to see beyond my contribution as an urban heritage strategist. And so, yeah, so this is what I have to say. And there was one comment that I had written on the chat, that 11.4.1, which is the indicator, it appears to be more focused on tangible cultural heritage. Of course, natural, yes, but more focused on tangible cultural heritage. And Antonina was coming again and again that indicators. I think indicators is what is the biggest challenge for us. And here at the Metropolis platform, Heritopolis platform, we have metropolises of different, you know, size and shape and density and concentration. So again, so I think urban densification is something that we should look at, and especially more relevant for metropolises in South Asia. That's all I have to say. I hope I have, you know, and once again, good to see you all. Yeah. Mike, I hope I have responded to what you were looking for.
I think that the most important is informal, sustainable women employment. I think there's something that is beyond the boutique cottage industries, but it is something much more than that. But I think that's really important. The informal housing is another aspect which you've done, and densification. I think these are important parts that we've flagged together. Murad, you have the screen.
Yes, I'll be brief. I think I have not been able to discuss with the Istanbul Planning Agency about the issues at stake in Istanbul on heritage issues, because they are busy trying to generate a vision. But let me tell you what our research unit in the university is now working on. Okay, I think we are in my research unit, we are working on the problem of spatial representation, and I told this issue to Jana previously. The word Heritopolis, okay, I think has two, it is related to heritage and also the metropolis. And when we talk about metropolis is a spatial formation that is, because of its scale, beyond human perception. But when we talk about heritage is a problem that relates basically on specificities, local specificities, and detail, okay? And I think the problem of Heritopolis comes up with a problem, with the challenge is written in the name itself, how it is possible to represent a spatial formation at as big, as wide as metropolis at high resolution and at high levels of disaggregation. I think high resolution and high levels of disaggregation are two issues that are key for having reliable and valid spatial information. Okay, so we have to find out ways of representing metropolis at high levels of resolution and at very high levels of disaggregation. So what we are doing actually is to generate models that are capable of doing that. Okay, and the first results we got are encouraging, I would say. We are now mapping and preparing metropolitan maps that shows the local formations at very, very high levels of resolution, at very high levels of attribute disaggregation. So I think this is what we are actually doing, and the prospects are good. I am going to make a presentation in Jana's meeting in the months ahead, and I will talk about that in India. Okay, in the month of March. Okay. So this is
Jana has hijacked us all into the course.
Yes, Jana is behind us. So this is what we are doing.
All recorded because I think it's going to be quite important. So yes.
I would love to rope Francesco into this, but I'm unable to reach him. Maybe my emails did not get to you. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so
we have to start to, for example, we are doing a similar work with mapping. So when we speak about the tools, we are doing a same project working with open data, trying to specialize the data. So probably inside the partnership, we start also to put together people that are doing the same work. So we should implement our perspective that I have to say, start, as I used to say, when Murat, you took me about Jacques Bertin sémiologie graphique and all our study regarding mapping, starting because our meetings and your story
in
about
Milano,
the three-dimensional indicator, and so so I think that we should also understand which are the tools that different partners are developing. So we start to work together. That should be another hypothesis of collaboration, I guess.
Okay, I just to add one word to what Antonella has said. We are actually using tools, adapting tools that were previously developed in France in their École des données, okay, the analyse des données, and we are using the software that were generated there to represent high resolution data at very large scales, okay, of spatial scales. And the earliest, the last example we did, we made a study on the representation of rural landscape in and around the city of Nicaea near Istanbul. Okay, and so the analysis, the unit of analysis is the parcel itself, and we are analyzing the land use composition of parcels, and we have analyzed something like 5,000 rural parcels scattered in 30 villages, and find out that the differentiation could be meaningfully categorized in 15 categories and mapped through 15 legend categories, and that the results, the early results, are encouraging. I will be able to share it with you, Antonella. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any more people on the screen? Okay, Rafa, and then
If there is no one.
oh, is there anybody? Jihan, you still have the option? No, you're okay. Great. Fine, so we'll give it to Rafa, and then I will take the prerogative of wrapping up.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I will be very quick. I have three proposals. No, three proposals from UN Habitat side, because you asked me, I don't know, I don't remember if yesterday or maybe this morning, how to put this in a more UN and UN Habitat language, no, and how to make it more attractive for UN Habitat to support more and more, to expand the support. I think, and so the first thing that we need to do is some classification or some categorization of the key messages report according to UN Habitat Drivers of Change. No, UN Habitat Drivers of Change is like the general and global strategic plan of the agency, and they also correspond with the implementation areas of the new urban agenda. So this is like our roadmap for the next year. So I think that it would help a lot to put within the UN Habitat senior management team, having these key messages in somehow categorized or regarding the UN Habitat drivers of change. No, that is something that we can evolve and elaborate more in afterwards. Second thing is also having this kind of linkages with the SDG targets, no? SDG targets and indicators. And that is a work that we can do it together. I offer myself to support this kind of matrix of relation and how to find these linkages with indicators, with targets. And I think that we can do it vis-a-vis with the framework, with the developing of the draft of the framework, no? Because also this kind of categorization and this kind of linkages will nurture the framework and the handbook and all the rest of the publication we spoke about this morning. And the third one, the final one, is and this becoming more important and more stronger after hearing Istanbul and Indian colleagues, is focusing more on intangible heritage. We are all aware that the metropolis are living organisms. They are, of course, holistical systems, but also somehow this is the definition of ICH, no? Intangible cultural heritage is related with practices, with techniques, with knowledge that can be transferred, that can be a social construction, that it is alive. So if we analyze it in detail, metropolitan planning instruments, metropolitan governance arrangements, or even metropolitan management in general, all of them are real at the end, are practices, are techniques, are methodologies, is knowledge which is being transferring, which is being commonly developed between or along several local governments, several actors. And of course, it is alive. So I think that if we really expand, if we really focus metropolitan heritage as something intangible, as intangible heritage, we can find a better conceptual approach, no? Because otherwise, I think that if we continue to limitate metropolitan heritage to tangible things, we only will find heritage within metropolises. No, but not a real metropolitan heritage.
Perfectly on what I reported earlier comes out of our survey, and no doubt from some of the others.
Do you think that the governance, the planning at the metropolitan scale could be considered as a heritage?
As intangible heritage, of course, because at the end is practice, is knowledge, is technique, which is the definition of from UNESCO of intangible and cultural heritage.
That's right. Okay. When you mention the SDG targets and indicators, presumably we should also put the new urban agenda there, especially the 3 transformative commitments and the 14 or 15, whatever it is, places where cultural heritage or natural heritage are mentioned, and develop those and link them up with the SDGs as the kind of monitoring evaluation framework.
Yes, and actually in this publication that I don't remember who, maybe Francesco or Simon, I don't remember, showed yesterday the New Urban Agenda Illustrated. There is a relation between the New Urban Agenda, sorry, Professor Mike, between the New Urban Agenda commitments and the SDG targets. And there are highlighted the 10 SDGs which have urban components. So that is a good place to start. We already have identified the 10 SDGs which have urban components beside the SDG 11. So I think that there is the implicit relation with the New Urban Agenda commitments. It is explained in that handbook. We can.
That SDGs don't relate the heritage with the context because I'm Cyrus.
Yes, there are.
So
yes, but we need to find that relation.
Because the SDGs didn't connect the problem of the heritage with a specific context. What we should do with Heritopolis. Also because we don't have data, so we don't have indicators that cannot be the traditional indicator that inside because the indicators that we found in the SDGs don't fit with the local problem. So we have to build our own SDGs to fit into the local scale. Do you remember that a few months ago, we spoke about the fact that Bezalel Academy should be the leader of a study regarding the local culture, the popular culture, so art in local culture. Because when we speak about intangible, we have, if you remember Saul Alcantara, so all the Latin America work a lot on these intangible values. And he made a very relevant study after Tell Me, with his student is the leader of ICOMOS Mexico right now. And he made an incredible job on the spirituality of the place, for example, Belvedere, that related to the landscape. So Latin America is a place where this intangible, also in the
you already mentioned art, and
but I think that you made a proposal because the local culture that is going to disappear.
First of all, we have Jihon and then Jana.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
Jihon.
Yeah.
Jihon.
Okay.
May I go?
Oh, maybe Jana can go first. Yeah.
Jihon.
Okay, thank you. Well, I just have a quick question about intangible cultural heritage that you are discussing right now, because I got confused. You know, my background is law and policy, so I don't know much about the city planning, I confess. But the issue is that, you know, like in UNESCO, the intangible cultural heritage is under the convention, and it's something a bit different, I think, what you were talking about, the culture of the governance and so on. It's not a really contemporary one. But at the same time, when you see the Creative City Network, I mean, that program of UNESCO, in the city system, it seems like, you know, like some kind of craftsmanship or some value for design within the city planning is really much valued as an intangible cultural heritage asset for the, you know, the municipal government, municipal development. So I just want to ask about the, you know, the boundary that we are talking concerning intangible cultural heritage, because that is very much connected to our future research under Heritopolis, because I personally very much interested in working on intangible cultural heritage agenda, because I also, you know, have written several articles about the Intangible Cultural Heritage Convention and so on, but it seems the approach is too broad to me. So that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Noted. Jana?
Yes, I actually, first I will, may I answer to Jihan's, it's not an answer, it's a comment, because yes, it's very broad, but then again, intangible is related to tangible. We cannot really separate the two, I think, in the case of a metropolis. because the intangible community, that is the custodian of the intangible, has to stay somewhere, and they're part of the Heritopolis. So that is my comment. So I cannot be separated, I think, not at all. And to extend to what Raphael has said, that about having a matrix, if I understood Raphael correctly, that having a matrix is what I'm working on, looking at 11.4, 11.41 against all the SDGs and all its targets and all its indicators. It's a tough job, but that's exactly what I'm working on right now. And I'm focused in Delhi, but I'm happy to assist and extend it to other places if needed. And I'm, again, great to be part of Heritopolis.
Okay.
I'd like to support what she said, because, you know, Rafa, I think we're also trying with this exercise to go beyond these categories. Categories are linked to a mechanics that took place at UNESCO in the past decades. I think that replicating that mechanic in the new context of the metropolis will not be very conducive. We're trying to do the same for culture, nature, and same thing for tangible, intangible. Try not to use these categories as defining specific modalities, because if you, the moment you say intangible heritage, is the Intangible Heritage Convention. It's not. So let's be a little bit more free, and you know, cross these categories and maybe generate some new thing.
No, absolutely, definitely. Yeah, I also proposed that because from yesterday we have been talking about that shifting paradigm, no, and to construct new things and so on. But I think that also charters, as you say this morning, charters are important, no. And if you revisit the 2003 UNESCO Convention on Intangible and Cultural Heritage, it is about that. It is about techniques. It is about knowledge. It is about methodologies which are, of course, alive and has been transferring somehow, no? And at the end, the metropolitan practice is that. It's a thing which is alive, which is composed by techniques, by methods, by social construction. So I think that we need to find a way to, of course, respect the past and the old ways of the UN old ways that you are a master on that. But also to having to find something new, no? Like we are trying to do that. I think at least for the last 10 years with Antonella when we speak about Metropolis, because all have to respect the past, but also to create something new.
What is English for subaltern? Respectful but not subaltern.
Subdue.
Subdue, but not subdue.
No, just one word.
Constraint.
I agree, but I think we have really to point to different and future perhaps modalities. So, you know, let's start inventing. I think, by the way, you were just using new words. You said practices. You didn't say, you know, intangible heritage. And when we say spaces, or you know, we move away from the strict and I would say obsolete definition of tangible. We can find better metropolitan spaces, metropolitan traces, metropolitan practices. No, these are things that we can.
What David said about the symbol that should produce a demos, the metropolitan demos is rugby or football. That for me,
the first test is our guidelines. Where the vocabulary will be new.
Right.
That is another issue. We are doing a software of so we did a software glossary that is almost like the Encyclopedia in Audi, but online, that allows the different experts to frame area of lecture. So, and is important. So if is open. So if we should start to implement this software, introducing the word of Heritopolis instead to make another work, due to the fact that we did with the European money, is open, is free, and we have a modality to introduce a new terminology.
David?
I just want to respond to the specific point, because to focus on the sport is to miss the point. It's not about sport, it's about valorizing and recognizing and rehabilitating the traditional ownership of the indigenous people who've been dispossessed. And there is no more powerful way of doing that in those societies than through sport, because the other people who are there would not engage with that through any other mechanism. So it's a classically brilliant way of actually popularizing, normalizing the idea that there are identities and ownerships and all the rest to be recovered and integrated into the.
I think about the Greek culture when you have the temple, the theater, and you don't have only the football place. That is true. Yeah. It's the only symbolical moment in which all together in the same landscape we should live in metropolitan experience. But it's a problem. I'm not saying that doesn't exist.
I think let's stop it. That's right. I think that what I can always say whether the discussion has been rich by how much I actually write and from my notebook, and there's plenty of pages, so that means that I really appreciate all the comments that you've actually given. So let me try and bring it together, because we do have to get some sort of summary, because this is going to be very important for the text which we're going to be using. The forum by which we're going to work on will try to address a thematic approach. So therefore, we have to identify those themes. Danielle from Rio did speak about the importance of also having a language option, and we need to consider it. That's something, let's put it like that. The next point is that completing then the general, the global report, and we have to be proactive, as Rafa had said, to ensure that we do have good representation, global representation, and also characteristic representation as well of different metropolises, not just simply large ones, not simply ones which have got sex appeal or whatever.
We need the sex appeal. Yes.
No, that was not for the decision. Okay, so it is an expanded version, which we hope that, again, an offshoot will be a published article. The subjects which would actually had come on the table at the first round, I think I'll try to put them together in the minutes. So we've got the systems approach, the culture, nature. I won't go through them again, but I will add in that we did discuss the issue, not of just economics, but specifically tourism was added. And the other thing which was added is also marginalization. I don't know whether it's marginalized communities or marginalized economics or marginalized spaces, but that was also a word which was also used.
Heritage of marginalized communities.
Right, everything is heritage of. Important point. The 3 points, the three of the Metro Hub is that of governance, policy, and planning. And Rafa had suggested that we use these headings somewhere so to make sure that we reintegrate ourselves within the system.
And project, because it's not possible not to have
I'll come to it in a minute.
Okay.
So the planning is then looked into the actual targets and the indicators. But in fact, that I would like to start off on the Metro Hub, on the policy, the word scale came up. So the scale of the city to the metropolis, it came on board with the scale of time. In other words, I speak about then scale is not just simply which is physical, it was also dealt with the scale between local and global. So I think scales is a really important consideration. The second one, which Jay spoke about, was spatial sustainability. And in the new urban agenda, that is a really, in my presentation, that really, to my mind, is one of the most important things. So I would even think that there's room there for looking at the illustrated new urban agenda, and in fact looking at what I'd identified culture as a noun, as a driver for sustainable development, which you've spoken about, and cultural as an enabler for sustainable development. And these are all words which I took from the new urban agenda. So I think that there's room there, just the door is open for us. And I think that's what we should be doing. We spoke about the importance of systems and open data. And I think that will come back, which Murat spoke about, the issue of cartography. And I think that it picks up the important word which we use in World Heritage, which Eric spoke about, was attributes. Because what are we mapping? We have to try to understand an attribute without my going into Spinoza's definition of attributes, which is over coffee I can speak about. But the issue essentially is to identify those attributes which Eric you'd mentioned, because we have to map things. And I think that this is exactly mapping the intangibility. I would rather than say intangible, because it links on to what Francesca was saying. It is linking to and beyond the conventions. I do think we have to have the conventions in the background, because there is a language which is being used, but we have to do beyond the conventions. And I think that this is an important point.
I was revising the metadata of the SDG 11.4, and it divides not intangible and intangible, but in cultural and natural. It could be also, we can use cultural instead intangible, no?
Let's leave this as an open subject. So the fourth one, to my mind, once we've got the scale and once we've got the data, we can look then at targets and indicators. I'm really completely mesmerized almost by what the IUCN did. And I look at it, and what we're trying to look at is not just simply data which I wrote here, of facts, but also trends. In other words, what is changing? This is, if we're looking at drivers for sustainable development, we have to look at change. This is the most important thing that we're talking about, the metropolis, a living city, a place with spirit, as Jay has said, and I think this is an important part. So permanency, nature is more likely to be permanent, it is not permanent, than culture. I might call it then the non-changeable parts of the metropolis, and that is
should change.
What?
Should change, but since it's durable, doesn't change.
So layers, it must be tempered with continuity, because layers smacks a little bit of archaeology, and we have to be a little bit careful about that, because there is a continuity. What? Landscape. That is better. So let me just quickly.
About the metropolis are plural. It's not metropolitan landscape.
So we're looking at continuities, essentially systems and infrastructure. So I think that this is what we're looking at. The issue of spaces is really critical. Neglected spaces, meanwhile spaces. I think that this is where we've got a new dimension of understanding then the actual parts of which we're actually relating to.
And also, when you speak about the data, what we should do as a methodology is to give.
At present, I'm just summarizing. So no, I'm not going to. Antonella, I'm not, because we're going to have another with this one wrap-up session. Okay, one more.
To do is not only construct the data, but to help civil servant to interpret the data, because that is our main issue.
Right. I will add that point. Okay, so the links to UN Habitat with Rafa is then the drivers of change, and again, trends are important. In other words, it's not just a map state, but it's the map change which has taken place. And then linking to the SDGs and the integrators, and Jana spoke to us about matrix, and I love matrices, so please let's have more of them. How in fact we merge different ideas. Of course, the SDGs are not just simply 11, but and it's not just 10. It might be 8 others, the ones which culture has actually looked at. But yes, beyond 11. I would like to say beyond 11. I think we have to look at much more integrative. David actually suggested, which comes again, is that we are focusing on new urban agenda, and that is really a critical part where we want to be. The third part is that of intangible, and Francesco said, let's be careful about using the word. I had written the word ceremonies, practices, the living holistic organism. Well, I also noted it's not just simply the 2003 intangible, but also cultural diversity, expressions of cultural diversity of 2005. So I think that there's other things, but if we say, yes, we want to link to conventions because they are important, World Heritage, etc., but we are beyond the conventions. I think this is where we have to say we're beyond what takes place. And I think that the cartography is most important. I was so impressed by Valentina's work with Antonella, and I think that this really should open up our minds. I think also Murat.
It's a mediator between the complexity
and Murat's work as well is really stupendous, and I think that we need to then extend this because the expression of space. Again, as some of us are in architecture, others in geography, but we deal with mapping, and but not just simply geographic mapping, but the whole concept of mapping ourselves and mapping and understanding to where all this goes. So I think that these are the points which again I'll try as a secretary just to put together so as that we get some summary of what is happening, and that's about it. So I thank Jana on screen, and also Temet, thank you for joining from Royal Holloway and Istanbul, and Murat and Klaus Peter. So, and thank everybody, and that was really excellent session. That was really good.
Thanks to you. Yeah, thank you. Pleasure.
But
Thanks to you.
no, I'm just a scribe. Okay. I think that we had allowed for one more session to wrap up generally, and also to allow, because we have had people from Indonesia, Brazil, Argentina, India, Turkey, Bahrain, Shanghai, and Tel Aviv. So we've had people have come on board. The Americas have had difficulty, although Danielle was was at somewhere around midnight. But I suggest that we do have this a very short wrap-up session, which will just to see where we're just taking ourselves to the next stage. So, but we'll have a bit something to eat, I think. Also, was that what it is? That's what's on the agenda?
We don't need to have the other one. We just close it now.
Oh, we close it now. Okay. So then we do need to add one more discussion is exactly when are we meeting, what are we meeting, and some just housekeeping, mainly housekeeping. Yeah. Okay. So right. No, well, for housekeeping is that we really have got the 4 groups. We just have to give ourselves times, and people are going to just make sure that they're going to look at the diaries. So I think let's go to the first one, is that Jay and Rafa. I tell you what, I will join 1 or 2 of you, but I won't take the responsibility. But I think that if you allow me then just to join each time, I think perhaps can have a little bit of memory of what has taken place. So Jay, give us your timetable for the Secretariat, and then Rafa can then come up with the thoughts about how to. Okay. So I think that let me sort of then decide on that one. Jay will then give us a timetable for the Secretariat, and within that timetable we will link it to Murat, the Istanbul conference, because that is really going to be a critical milestone, and a draft from Rafa regarding a new letter of intent, which will take on board the commitment of each university or institution for a challenge. That is the most important thing, and of course relating to the society. Okay, so and within the uni, whatever it is. So you got weaving all this together. Okay, So the second one, David, the second working group, what timing for that?
Well, as I suggested earlier today, the priorities are to do the next version of the expanded global report, to distill this stuff out of that, the sort of executive summary, which we need working towards a global assembly, and then to develop, and we'll invite some people to join, producing that paper, the academic paper from that. So we said that the next substantive discussion about the forum, as you call it, and how to lead it and the themes and so on would be part of the Istanbul agenda.
Okay, but that's just the global report. And then you will also then, will there be a first 5-pager or not? Because we said we'd have a 5-pager. That's what you're going to, that was what you're going to be doing.
The revised report with the additional cities that come in by early January, then the executive summary 5-page, whatever we call it, that we need for both the society registration here and as one of the documents to annex when we go to the Habitat Assembly. And then there's the paper from that for publication, which is quite a lot to do between now and March, April. Yes.
Now and then. Okay. Now the next one, the third group, which I am looking at, is then, wow, so far back.
Almost ancient history.
Yeah, it's ancient history. So it's then, it is then the framework. Okay, framework. Francesco.
I am afraid I will have to take the lead on that because he's too busy. David is too busy. But and David, you agree?
Sure, I'm happy to help, but I think if you would be so kind as to lead, that would be appreciated.
Okay, I will start.
Okay. And then on that one, we're expecting that everybody will then take on board. So it's you know, it's just a matter of who is going to just put the stuff together. Okay, we had a fourth working group, did we? Yes. The forum. So we're going to have to think about who is going to take on board that. So,
well, hopefully we'll have the right people around the table in Istanbul to be able to have a full discussion. The researchers will have discussions between now and then. And then we'll have some strategies going forward.
Well, I would like to suggest as follows, is that you're absolutely right, but I think we need to prepare materials. So what I would suggest is that
don't make a call to understand which are the research ongoing.
I was just about to say that, but I would say it in a way that, first of all, that we are asking each institution to come along and speak about it. I don't think we can put out a call yet. The call has to be through the institutions. I don't think that it's that we have the call will be through the institutions. Okay, Politecnico di Milano, you call out who there is. I don't think we can yet.
No, but among the participants of Heritopolis,
that's what I'm saying.
We don't know what is, for example, today we knew.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
So I'm saying that what I will then first of all try to put the minutes of the meeting of the forum of the subjects which have come up. I think therefore the secretariat and the framework are beginning to work between now and March, let us say, and therefore we'll then have a basis for discussion in March at the Istanbul Forum. Klaus Petter, yes.
Because I could not participate in the session which was at 2 o'clock in the night. I have a question. What was the first group? The second one was the survey. And what was the first one?
First one is the setting up the society, the administration. The second one is the global report. The third one is setting up the framework, which is in fact the guidelines. And then the fourth one is then the forum, the research and challenges.
Yeah.
We don't want to just simply use the word research. We go because there'll be a lot of other things. We've added the word challenges.
Okay, thank you. I only wanted to know about the first one because the 2, 3, and 4 I knew about, and as I always said, I'm working together with Simon in the global report. Thank you.
So I think that Murat, I think that this will be the basis for the agenda, or at least one part of the agenda of Istanbul. We would like also to have the opportunity of visiting some of the urban metropolis together with you and see it perhaps even at 95 as well. But in addition to that, we will also have some discussions as well. And it just But I think that I don't know. I think that this looks like a 2 days. A two-day event plus a day to tour. That would be like essentially 3 days. Is that something which is yeah, Murat?
Yes, I don't know whether we told with you before the meeting is that we are going to have a session in Istanbul where the Istanbul people is going to present their practices, and there will be a brainstorming session from those participants on comments. I think it would be convenient if you put it on the program schedule in Istanbul.
Yeah,
okay,
that's
half a day or half. Okay, so the Istanbul people are looking for having some time to present their cases and also have your comments and suggestions. Okay?
I think that is obvious. The host is that will have one point of the agenda. That's fine,
okay.
And that goes without saying. So yeah. So the total number of days would be 3 days.
Okay, that was what we have talked with you, and this is what they are talking about. Okay, but it is possible to have if some flexibility. I think this is the wheel is not fixed yet, so I think we are going to finalize it in 2 weeks ahead. Okay, the dates and the meeting.
So the 2-day discussion will include half a day on Istanbul.
Istanbul, yes.
That's great. Okay.
They are looking for it. Okay, so it would be okay.
I think that's all the housekeeping that we need to do.
Yes.
Good. So thank you on the screen. Thank you for participating.
Okay, thank you very much.
But you can stay in the stadium. I'm kicking you out.
Mike, why don't you give us a closing remark?
I don't think I will.
Maybe Francesco.
Francesco, give us.
Well, I think that you will be the last one to speak. You are the host. You are the host. You're obliged.
Closing remark.
No, I really.
Francesco.
Yeah, but first of all, I would like again, as we said at the beginning, to thank you very much for having given us the opportunity to meet physically for the first time since the beginning of the idea of Heritopolis, which now is probably like 3 years old already.
No,
so more.
No, 2 years, 2.5. Yeah,
well,
it came after it came.
My memory is longer because the thing has been prepared before.
It's been simmering.
So, but without this meeting, we probably would not be able to really, see the future and see the perspective and the relevance of this idea. So I think all the thanks go to you, of course, to the institution that you represent, but also I would say to Korea in general, because it's been really very welcoming, very warm, very welcoming. I encourage everybody who has not been here to come. This is a great place, great place, very, very important. And by the way, the fact that you also accepted that discussion to serve as secretariat shows your commitment and the interest that not only you, but the community of colleagues here in Korea have for this issue. We have seen it, by talking to some of them. It was secondly, thank you for organizing this very rich participation. I think, we've been here 2 days, but my head is spinning because I think we've been everywhere in the world and everywhere in Korea and perhaps everywhere in the planet. And sometimes even outside of the planet. So it has been really in orbit. In satellites,
Okay.
extraterrestrial. So this has been, clearly is the result of careful planning and very, very accurate planning. That it all goes to your merit, Jay. I don't know. I know you're very, very modest and so on, but really the applause goes to you.
Bravo.
And your team.
And the team there.
Yes. Thank you very much.
And the team, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Secondly, and I think this comes without saying, after we had a very long wrap up by Michael. So I think we also now have a much clearer idea of where we're going. This is very, very, very important, both in terms of institutional framework, both in terms of the steps ahead. It's very clear now. At least we know what's going to happen, at least in the past 2 years. 2 years planning is long term these days. So I think this allows us to really now have a complete vision and a breadth of all the kind of things that we have to do. And also we have structured a packages of activities that will certainly structure this next 2 years in ways that I think are innovative and creative and also rich of experience and rich of articulated and rich in experience. Now, of course, the issue that we are dealing with is very big. I mean, Heritopolis is more than a project; it's a dream. it's a vision. So it's not something that we will ever really grasp. Let's be frank. We have put the work something that is impossible to grasp, completely, because it's too vast, too articulated, too diverse, and maybe this is its value. It's the fact that we will never be able to grasp it completely and put it in an orderly fashion is a value. It's something that we always have to remember. This is not something that we can master completely. We can have a vision on it, but we cannot master it. And this is good. So what we can do is serve this new context of reflection on the life of cities, on the life of heritage, the life of people, on the society, through a system of to a set of suggestions, a set of hints, perhaps experiences, renovation of experiences, innovative outlooks, and so on. So it's more like injecting in the system new ideas and new frameworks that can be useful for those who have responsibilities at different levels: top, medium, low, bottom up, top down, all sorts of things. We talk to everybody. So while we know that now because we're all planners or architects as well, so we sort of think of something concrete that comes down. But this time, let's be very modest. We are essentially operators of a process. We are not those who will close the thing. We are helping the process. I hope and I think people on the other side expect this. The people like our friend from Your Habitat, which doesn't appear. People in the planning agencies, I guess they don't want anybody to dictate rules or make new rules. No, we want to, in fact, enrich the works of the others. I think this is quite important. It should be really the spirit of the approach that we will perhaps describe in these guidelines that we are going to present. Okay, so this is at least what I see it, in terms of after 2 years of roundabouts and 2 years of metropolitan thinking and metropolitan dreaming. and I hope that this will lead us to very interesting professional, technical, human experience in the coming years. Thank you.
Okay, good. So now, the last word is you. No question about it.
Okay, everybody wants me the last word. Okay, thank you very much. One of the famous Korean food is the bibimbap. Yeah, you know that. That is I think that now it become one of the Francesco and the Michael's favorite dishes in Korea. And one of the virtue of this bibimbap is that you put all different the kind of element, vegetables, meat, yellow meat, radish, anything. And each element has a quite unique taste. But if you put it all together with rice and some sauce, and you just make a stir for that, and it makes one of the quite delicious and unique taste. So I think that heritage itself is like equal to this kind of bibimbap. We all know that quite different cultures ever developing quite different heritages. But how we deal with this heritage, individual taste, or we just put it together using the dish called with Heritopolis, and then making one of the unique taste, like we called it Heritopolis. And I think that this Heritopolis is also very important because it is a matter of cross borders. It is triggering to lower our words and then integrate it together. So as a secretariat officer, I feel like that I kind of being servant all of you. And one of my philosophy is very clear: transparency, circulation all of information. And under the leadership of Professor Mike Turner, Professor Francesco Penderin, and all of the colleagues, Eric, David, Antonella, and also Raphael. So maybe we get together and making these things are real, and just getting lower the walls and the barriers, making the world a little more better place to live. That's what I like to say, and I like to send a message. I will be your messenger, and I will be your servant. Okay? That's my intention. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you. Who's on the right?
Yes,
Arafat. That's Arafat.
Oh,
yeah,
Arafat.
Arafat. And Joanna is here too. Joanna, are you connecting? Do you like to say something?
Sorry, my camera is broke. Yes, it was very nice to have the chance to listen to you mainly. I'm sorry I couldn't join you on site, and I hope that will change in the future. I just wanted to wish you all great holiday times.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You too.
We also have to say that we're not having the session because Arafat has come on board for the session.
Yeah, why not?
So we have to say.
Arafat, do you have some word to us?
Beg your pardon?
Do you like to speak to us, or
no? Here
you have some words to say something?
We're not.
Really would like to express our appreciation on behalf of Swahilipot and the Mombasa team for putting together this, and also for spearheading this conversation. We are very much committed to the movement. At times things might be a bit slow. It's because there's so many other things happening over here, but we are very much excited to be part of this initiative, and keep up with the great work. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So no, that's it. Just to thank you, Arafat. We will be continuing the discussion, and we'll be sending the minutes out, and then people will then start working together, and we'll have the opportunity of having your report for January, as we spoke about, and then perhaps the opportunity of all us meeting in Istanbul sometime in the spring. So I think this is the next and Nairobi for the General Assembly. There's of UN Habitat. You are host country there, so
he will help us organizing it.
Right. Okay, so we've had a long day, so with this we will be closing, but I see that Klaus Peter has still got his hand up, so.
Yeah, I would like really to thank you all, and especially Jay, for organizing this so tremendous interesting session, and I have to excuse that I could not be in person there, but in the sessions I could participate. It was so tremendous success, and I think what Bandarin has said about the progress of we made in the last years, I think he is really right. So thank you all for this tremendous experience.
Thank you, Klaus Peter. Now it's time to finish.
Okay.
All of this
Chat. What is in the chat?
Okay, chat said that.
Joanna says all the best, and I hope to see you soon. Sorry, I couldn't join you.
Maybe Prof.
Yeah, now it's 7 o'clock. Yeah, last session, but we need to close.
Nobody's coming, though.
And nobody's coming.
Oh, perhaps they are. It's only 7.
Let's give 2 minutes, because if somebody cancels, doesn't spend any
Yeah.
minutes, not good.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay, so you missed the wrap up.
Yeah, last remark.
So you won't know until the minutes come around how many tasks we actually allocated.
So who was that? Joanna then writing that?
Yeah.
That
simply what you already said. Sorry, she couldn't join.
Joanna, just to say that all the best, and I hope to see you
Okay.
again. So I need to now it's all safe. Claim.
So somehow we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We had beyond this another 10 people which were participating.
So at some point over the 2 days, we actually had quite a lot of people from
That's
the
what I'm
different
saying.
regions.
That's what I'm saying. It's
apart from
Thanks all. Close the session.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.